How's your life, Mr. Curry?
How was what?
Your life?
It's all right. Leftover pizza.
Mr. Curry, have you put all your retirement money into gold and silver for the upcoming recession?
I have not.
Cryptocurrency and
No, I do have a lot in land though. So.
I don't know.
All right, guys. So, hold up. Probability part 2. Your job was to go and do all the problems you know how to do and ask me questions about the ones you didn't. So, talk to me. Anybody have any issues? Yes. Okay, so that number 12, I was really just trying to get you to think more a little outside the box. So on number 12, it said, what is the probability that if you draw 4 separate drawings from 50 tickets that are numbered 1 through 50, that the following selections occur? So they're telling you to get 4 consecutive numbers, but to do it in order. So give me an example of 4 consecutive, but in order. Now, if I just say 4 consecutive, that means I could get like, I could draw a 1, then a 4, then a 2, then a 3. And I end up getting consecutive numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. But I didn't do it in order. So if I'm going to do it in order, then the order in which I draw them actually has an impact on the problem, right? But they have to end up being consecutive. So they also like, so 1, 2, 3, 4 is an option. 2, 3, 4, 5 is an option. 3, 4, 5, 6 is an option. And since it didn't say they had to ascend, I could also do things like 7, 6, 5, 4, 50, 49, 48, 47. But I can't do something like 48, 49, 50, 47. Because even though those would end up being consecutive numbers, if I change the order, it wouldn't follow the rule for in order. So let's count up how many ways that can happen. So I thought one of the ways to think about it, and this is not the only way, but one of the ways to think about it is this. I could be consecutive increasing or decreasing. So how many ways can I draw 4 consecutive numbers in order while increasing out of 1 through 50? And sometimes the way to think about that way to count that is, what can I not do? I can't start with a 48 because that I won't be able to. We're talking about just ascending right now. I can't do a 48. I can't do a 49. I can't do a 50. So how many ways can I draw that first ticket? 47. So on the first ticket, I can draw any one of the 47 numbers, right, on the first ticket and still finish out the consecutive numbers and be in order ascending. Now, once I draw that number, whether it's a 1 or a 47 or a 6 or a 12, how many ways can I draw the next one? Just 1. And the next one? Just 1. And the next one? Just 1. So there's only one other way to draw each of the following, because once I draw that first one, in order to increase, there's only one other card that's 1 greater than it, right? Now, what about decreasing? Because I could increase in order, ascend, or I could also descend. So, or what could I do? How many ways can I get a number and descend but still be consecutive and in order? 47 again, right? Because I could do any of the 1 through 50 with the exception of 1, 2, or 3, right? So that's the same thing. So you could say times 2 or do this again. But again, once I pick that number, be it 5 or 12 or 37, there's only one way to draw the next one smaller and one way to draw the next one smaller and one way to draw the next one smaller if I'm going to be in order and consecutive. Now, how many ways are there for the denominator, right? This is the number of ways to do the event. But the denominator is the total number of ways to draw 4 cards in that order. So how many ways can I draw 4 cards from 50?
50 times 40.
So either 50 times 49 times 48 times 47, or what? 50 P4, because we're talking about in order, right? And 50P4, remember, what is another way of thinking about that? In addition to writing out the definition, which is 50 factorial over 46 factorial, isn't it the first four numbers in 50 factorial, which is 50, 49, 48, 47? And then what changes from 12 to 14? With replacement, does that affect the 47? When I draw it, I still got to get that next one smaller, so nothing's affected on the top. Does it affect the denominator? How so? Remember, if I replace it, it's dependent or independent? Independent. If it's independent, combinations and permutations are off the table because there's no factorial going on. Because if I put it back, aren't there still 50 cards on my next choice? So because that right there, because that is the same thing as 50, 49, 48, 47, if I'm putting it back, then this becomes what? 50, 50, 50, 50, because it's always out of 50 when you put it back. And again, for those of you who are looking at this going, what? It kind of makes sense, but this is not a typical test question. It showed up one time. It's a little odd. I just like to push the envelope and help you to think. Sometimes things are not that straightforward. Now, that's not the only way to do it. I mean, you could think like this. You could think in the numerator. You could say, all right, there are only 6 numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 50, 49, 48, that if you pick one of those, you can only get that sequence one way. Are you with me? So you could say that there's 6 numbers that I could pick, that if I pick those, then the next choice, there's only one option, one option, one option. And then there's what? 44 numbers, right? So you could say something like, and I'm pretty sure this is the same unless I'm missing something. You could say there's 6 numbers right there. That's 6, 1, 2, and 3, and 48, 49, and 50. That if I pick those, the next number is, there's only one option. And then the next number is one option. And the next number is one option. And the next number is one option. But there are 44 numbers that if you pick them, like say you pick 7, what can your next option be? If I pick a 7, I could pick a 6 and then go down with it, or I could pick a 8 and go up with it. And you could say, oh, there's 44, where the second choice I have 2 options, but then once I establish direction, one option, one option. And if you think about it, 47 times 1 times 1 times 1 plus 47 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 94. What's 88 plus 6? 94. So there's not just one way to think about these, but that's 2 different ways you could think about it. This right here, this is an example of 6 numbers that can only go either increase or decrease. And then there's 44 numbers that could increase and decrease. Anyway, weird little problems, but something that you can actually sit down if you think about each little item, each little one, find some patterns and get there. Anybody else on any of these? 4 odd numbers, no replacement. So if they're odd, I just have to pick from the odds, right? It says no replacement. So if I'm not putting it back, I might be able to use combinations and permutations. So out of 1 through 50, and it doesn't say they have to be in order, doesn't say they have to be consecutive, anything, just 4 odd. How many odds are there? 25. And it doesn't say anything about order. So from those 25, how many do I need? 4, and the order doesn't affect the outcome? So could you just do that? And then how many numbers are you picking from? And you're picking 4, right? Now, what does my key say? It just so happens that mathematically, that and with P's and this, that's the same thing, because the extra 4 factorial cancels. So this is the first 4 numbers in 25 factorial over a 4 factorial. This is the first 4 numbers in 50 factorial over a 4 factorial, and both the 4 factorials cancel. So if I wrote this, or just wrote it like I originally had before the parentheses, those all mean that. But if I say with replacement, then all of a sudden you can't do what? Combinations or permutations or factorials because they're not involved. Every time I look for an odd number, it's what? 25 out of 50, or half the time. I put it back half the time. I put it back half the time. So you end up getting just the same thing 4 times. Y'all seeing that? These are more along the lines of what you might see in a test. But this one, with in the order and the consecutive, blah, that doesn't feel to me like a test question you should be worried about. What else? Anybody? Before we jump into cards. By the way, does everybody have an exam review packet? Everybody's got one? I have the key posted. For your sake, if you had, and I'll just, again, it's your life. The whole scheme of things is not going to affect your life that much. But it is your exam. If it were me and I cared about my grade, if I had a 97 average and I crunched for the semester and I crunched the numbers on that and I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, I need basically a 75 to keep my A. Then I got to be honest with you. At the very minimum, I would go and redo it once. And the ones I miss, at the very minimum, I'd pull the key up because I've got some room, right? The ones I miss, I'd pull the key up and at least look at the key and kind of see what happened. Probably would be fine. No guarantees. Should probably be okay. If you have a 91 average or something like that, like if you had an 87 average or whatever, and you've got a cushion, all right? 87 is tricky because mathematically you might not be able to get to an A. You might, though. It's like probably the only time of the year where a crappy test score is good. Because like if you have an 87 average and you have one crappy test score, like I got a guy who's made A's, high B on one, all A's, and a 67 in my pre-cal class. And that 67 has drug his grade down to like an 86B, which an 86B is, you can't recover from that. But when you drop that 60, whatever it is, that 86B turns into a 90-something. And he's got a fighting chance for an A for the semester, right? But bottom line is, if not counting the drop, if you got a pretty good cushion, then you've earned the right to kind of take it a little easy on that. But every year, I have 1 or 2 people that lose their grade when they have a decent cushion, but they blow it. Like, I mean, they have a 94 average, and they crunch the numbers, and they're like, all I got to do is make a B to get an A. And they make a C. And believe me, and I've had them walk in here and go, you got to give it to me. You got to get, I'm like, really? You made a low C on my exam and you want me to give you an A? Like, there's no way that's going to happen. It'd be one thing if you had like a 90 average. I'm sorry, if you had an 88 average and you crunch the numbers and you're like, I need a 96 to get my A. And you bust your tail and you get a 94. So that doesn't give you the A, right? But I look at it and I'm like, they made a 94 on the exam. To me, I might, now granted, you'll never know you made a 94. On a situation like that, you'll look down and you'll go, I made a 96. Sweet. And you'll just think you did. And I'm not going to call you up and go, hey, I gave you some points, because I don't do that. But you would never know. But you might have just kind of gotten a gift because you at least made an A. Same thing with a B. But if you make a C, you really don't have an R. Or even a B when you could have gotten an A, well, you got the grades you needed. You made a B. So anyway, if you want to do really well, like if you have a 77 average, 76 average, that you can get that to a B. And I've seen people do it every year. If it were me, I would do this thing once. Don't worry about missing stuff. Just do it once. Go get the key, check and correct everything you miss. Circle those problems that you miss. Don't even guess. Because if you guess, you might think you know it and you won't look at it again. But circle everything you miss. Get another one of those or print off the problems that you need to. I'll have the key. And I might have the key already up, but if I don't, I'll get it up quickly. I can print you other packets. Those I think are all extras. And redo the ones you miss. I've had people redo it, done the thing 3 times. Did it once, redo the ones they missed, redo the ones they missed again. They came in here and they usually get what they want to, what they need to actually improve. So, but don't be that one or two guys every year that just chokes it. And I know they didn't do anything because like they're missing easy problems. You can just tell they went through the review and they did. This is bizarre too. Like, why would you take the review sheet that I'm not giving you credit for, right? Why would you just do the ones you know how to do? Let's be logical for a second, which I hate that they don't teach logic in the schools anymore. Let's be logical. Why would you even do the problems that you know how to do? Y'all ever thought about that? I see people every year. When I used to take it up, there'd be like 200 problems on there. They'll do 120 questions. And then the ones they don't know how to do, so I don't know how to do this. Like those are the ones you don't know how to do, the ones you do need to do. Like the ones you already know how to do. I mean, maybe it makes you feel good. Hey, I got it right. I did it. But you already know how to do those. It's just bizarre to me, the logic on that. Why would you spend hours and hours doing things that you know how to do? Now, it makes total sense to do the whole thing and to expose yourself and then to go back and refocus. But think about that when you're preparing for this. You'll have 3 days in here. I'll guarantee you 3 days in here to ask questions or whatever. And then your test starts Tuesday, 6, 7, 4, 5. So you have the second exam on Tuesday. So you have that big weekend too to kind of prepare and look over stuff. But anyway, don't lose your grade because of this. The test is not, and I've maybe already said this, but it's kind of like a Where's Waldo, where Waldo's in there, but he's buried in, you know what Where's Waldo, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But he's buried in there with tons of other people. It's the same thing with these problems. Your test questions are in your packet. They're just surrounded by a bunch of other questions that aren't on the test, right? So your test is very doable. It's multiple choice. If I haven't said this already, half of it's multiple choice maybe. There's a small calculator section front and back. And I will grade it right or wrong, the multiple choice part. And then if you come up short, I regrade it all your work. I don't just regrade the ones you missed. I like literally grade it again. And that helps me grade more quickly. And usually the scores are pretty close, but sometimes when I regrade it, you get lucky and you get a couple extra points out of it. Maybe that'll be what you need. So anyway, for whatever that's worth. Anybody else on this before we jump in the card questions? And I hope you think that the card questions aren't a lot different, but.
Oh, I was curious about 31. Because I feel like you talked about this.
31?
Yeah. Earlier in the year.
Okay, yeah, this is certainly not something I'd ask you about, but I thought it was interesting. So this question has popped up before. Like, what's the probability that 2 or more students in a class of 25, this is 24, have the same birthday? Did we ever go through this? Does anybody have a matching birthday here? Did we ever go through and see? Maybe I can look later because I don't want to take time right this second to literally go through there. But in a class of 25, it's about a coin flip. In a class of 25, it's a coin flip that somebody matches somebody's birthday. And off the top of your head, you're like, there's no way that's accurate. But the question's not, does somebody match your birthday? It's that somebody match somebody else's. And we've done it over the years, and it has been pretty accurate. About half the time, there's a match in that particular class. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't. But anyway, the math on that would be kind of tricky. So here's the thinking on the math. So the first thing you do is, let's just say I walked up and said, all right, he's going to tell me his birthday, and I don't know anything else. So when he first tells me his birthday, what's the probability? By the way, an easier way to think about that is to think about how it can't happen, because there's much fewer ways it can't happen than it can happen. So, and it's easier to count that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out the probability that it can't happen and subtract it from 1, right? Which is a complement. So when I first ask him his date and he tells me, what's the probability that he matches somebody else? I'm sorry, what's the probability that he doesn't match somebody else? Well, the probability he doesn't match somebody else is 1 because I don't know anything at first glance, right? There's a 365 chance out of 365 when he tells me that your birthday, which is July 12th, he's like, well, he hasn't matched anybody so far. So there's a 365 out of 365. Now, right? Then I move on. And I'm like, all right, now I'm going to ask you your birthday. Now, when he says his date, now there's a what percent that he doesn't match. 364 out of the 365 because I already know your date, right? So there's a 364 out of a 365 chance that he doesn't match him. And then I move on to him and say, well, what about you? And he goes, well, and he tells me the date. Well, there is a 363 out of a 365 chance that he won't match anybody. And I keep doing that all the way through, right? Well, then how many people are in this class?
24.
There are 24, right? So I keep doing this, but that's a whole lot of fractions. So I thought to myself, what would be a quicker way to write that? And by the way, this is what doesn't work, right? So I subtract that from 1. But I thought, what do I end up with? What do I end up with in the numerator?
365.
Yeah, but that's so tedious to write all of them out. So isn't that the first 24 numbers in 365 factorial?
Yeah.
What's that the same as?
365.
P. That's the same thing as 365 P24, right? Because I'm dividing by that minus that factorial, which cancels them all out except the first 24. And then what's in the denominator?
365
to the 24th power. Take that, subtract it all from 1. And by the way, if you don't know this yet, if you have an Inspire, if you turn on your Inspire, and by the way, even a cheap calculator has that. I just don't know where it is. I'd have to look at your calculator, like even a $12 Scientific. But if you go to menu, which you always go when you're in doubt, you go to menu, down at number 5 or so, it'll say probability. And you hit see probability, there's a factorial, there's permutations, there's combinations. So the way permutation, you can hit 2 on permutation. The way permutations work, when you hit that button, it'll say this, N, P, R, and parentheses, which I don't really like the way it does that, but that's what it'll do. So what you do is you put 365, comma, 24 in there. And then on the bottom, you can go 365 to the 24th. So if I was doing this, I'm going to go 365. The comma, by the way, is below the pi sign, bottom left. And that's a huge number, has like 60-something places. It's massive. But you divide that by 365 to the 24th, and it shrinks it to 0.461. When you subtract that from 1, you get 50. You get actually 0.53834. So 53.8%. So there's about a coin flip. About half the time you're going to have a class with a matching birthday. Y'all with me? But anyway, I thought that was a kind of an interesting question and at least confirmation that it's true. All right, I want you to look at cards. Now, you're going to see on most of these cards, you can skip all these notes because we've really talked about all of them, except for this little thing right here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a particular situation in a moment that's kind of tricky, okay? Because we're going to spend less time, because I'm not going to be with you tomorrow, I have to give an AP test, and because I cut out a day of review, I'm not going to ask about that on your test, which affected 2 problems, which is roughly 5-6 points, which a lot of people miss because people don't miss the whole problem, but they miss that part a lot. So I'm not going to put it on there, but I'm going to put it on there as a bonus, right or wrong. So if you do understand this little part that's a little extra tricky, great. All cards on the table, no pun intended. I actually taught this incorrectly for over a dozen years, maybe 15 years. And it never showed up until I really started pushing the envelope on questions. Because I look back through old tests and I just didn't ask those questions. But then when I really started pushing the envelope on questions, which I mean, I really started making them trickier and trickier, I out-tricked myself. And I want to see if you catch it. All right. So right here, I'll just throw one out for you. And we'll see if you kind of are thinking this way. What is the probability? I'm on right up under all the notes. There's a question right here that says, we're playing a game of straight 7-card poker. So basically, you deal out 7 cards, you make your hand, you're not going to have to know the rules of poker, but you basically pick your hand from these cards, that whatever the best hand wins. But I'm going to be very particular about what you're finding the probability about. So this is a 7-card hand, so you're getting 7 cards. In all of our games of poker, the order in which you get them does not affect the outcome, right? You get your cards, you can arrange them however you want. Question is, what is the probability that the hand we are dealt has 3 aces, 2 kings, And then here would be the tricky part that I would not ask you about on the test. And 2 other different kinds of cards. And what I mean by that, first of all cards are different. So if I say, hey, what's the probability of getting 2 different cards? 100%, or the probability is 1, because all cards are different. There are no 2 of any one kind. Now, there could be 2 kinds. I mean, there's 13 different kinds. There's 4 different suits, but there's no exact same card. So when I say 2 other different kinds, what that's going to mean is the other cards not only don't match each other's kinds, so there's not like the last 2 cards weren't both kings. Because if they were both kings, they're not, well, not kings. The other cards aren't, like, for instance, both 7s. Because if they were both 7s, then you would have a pair, right? So I'm saying that they're not only not matching, but they also don't match these kinds either. So I want you to walk through this problem, ignore what they have. Truly, don't look what they have, and see if you can answer this question. So the first thing, how many ways can I draw 3 aces? 4C3, because there's 4 aces to choose from. You're going to choose 3. Okay, so again, ignore what they have, and I want to expose what I used to think wrong and why, and what you very well may think wrong. So 3 aces right here. I would come down and say there's 4 to choose from. Order doesn't have an effect on the outcome. 4C3. Okay, moving on. And, so times, how many ways can I draw 2 kings? 4C2. Okay, now, how many ways can I draw the last 2 cards if they can't match not only each other in terms of its kind, but also aces or kings? So we know it can't be aces, and we know it can't be kings. Okay, so let's build off that. If you didn't hear him, he said the first one, there are 11 different kinds left, because this time I didn't say what kind it was going to be. If I said the last 2 cards, I was getting 1 jack and 1 10, you could say 4C1, 4C1, right? But I didn't say what kind it had to be. So he's saying that there are 11 ways, and this is what I did for years, that there are 11 ways that that last kind could be picked, right? And from those 11 kinds, like let's just say it was 7s or 5s or 2s, how many ways can I pick 1 card of that kind? 4C1, which is the same as 4. Now think about it. Me picking 1 kind there, 1 of the 4, is just like picking 3 of the 4 or 2 of the 4. The only difference is I knew this was aces, and I knew that was kings, so I didn't have to pick the aces out of the 13 different kinds, did I? It was chosen for me, but now it's not available. And I didn't have to pick the kings out of the remaining 12 kinds. It was chosen for me, so I just picked them. But I do have to pick what kind that is, and there's 11 different ways to do that. And again, this is what I taught for years. Now, once I pick that kind, now that kind is off the table. So now kings, aces, and whatever that kind are not option. How many kinds are left now? 10. So I said, well, 10 different ways to pick that last kind, but 4C1, once I pick that kind, I need to pick 1 of the 4. 4C1. And then on the bottom, I was picking how many total cards? 7, 52C7. Now, does that sound correct? And it did to me forever. And then I got in this program called Wolfram Alpha. And Wolfram Alpha is this brilliant computer program where you can literally type in a problem. Like you can say, what's the probability of getting a full house? I can say, what's the probability of getting 3 aces, 2 kings, and 2 other kinds? And sometimes it reads you wrong. Like sometimes you're saying something and it's like not interpreting it. But if it interprets it, like full house was easy for it, it spit out this thing. And when it spit it out, for example, I didn't see like an 11 and a 10 in there. I saw 11C2. Instead of seeing 11 and a 10, I saw 11C2. And I went, wait a minute. 11C2 is this. 11 factorial over 9 factorial, 2 factorial, right? And 11 factorial over 9 factorial is 11 times 10 over 2, right? But here I didn't have 11 factorial. I mean, I didn't have 11C2. I essentially had what? 11P2, which meant that I was saying unintentionally that the order in which I picked those last two cards had an effect on the outcome. But did it? No. And for 11 or to 15 years, I don't know how many, I probably didn't teach it my first few years because I was teaching, let's just say, not the quality of students that you are today. Okay, a much less interested in math group of folks. And even for those of you that aren't interested, you're very bright, even if you aren't interested. But I mean, these guys not only didn't care, they were very fun. And I still keep up with a lot of them, but they didn't care and they didn't really want to learn and they weren't super at math. Had a lot of the gifts, just not math. So there's a mistake. And here's why. Is there a difference? Well, let me ask you a question. What if I said, I want 3 queens and 2 jacks? Or what if I said 3 jacks or 2 queens? Are those different hands?
Yes.
Yes. Now, what if I had 2 queens and 2 jacks versus 2 jacks and 2 queens? Are those different hands? No. So the question is, if I did not say to you what I wanted to have as a 3 of a kind, like here I told you aces, but what if I just said 3 of a kind and I didn't tell you aces? Then you could say there are 13 different ways for me to get that 4C3 because here this order has an effect on the outcome. And then if I said there are 2 of a kind and I didn't say kings, I just said 2 of a kind, then it's okay for you to say there are 12 remaining kinds left. That would have been okay. I didn't need to do that because I told you aces and kings. But if I didn't, and I said 3 of a kind, 2 of a kind, then I can say 13 that, 12 that. Because the order 13, 12 is 13P2, right? And 13P2 is saying the order in which I got that 3 of a kind and that 2 of a kind is different. And it is here. But when they're the same number of kinds, which you see there, changing the order doesn't matter. Because you are getting one of each, the last 2 cards were one of those, one of those. That's the same number. 1 queen, 1 jack, 1 jack, 1 queen, same hand. I can't say 11 and 10 there. What I have to do right here, instead of saying 11 and 10, I have to say 11, choose 2. So I'm going to pick 2 of the 11 remaining kinds to go 1 card apiece. And that right here basically counts the number of ways to get 1 card of each of the remaining kinds. And that is by far the hardest thing on this test for people to remember every year. And you won't lose points this year on that, but you might gain them if you get that on a test, because I'll put it on as a bonus. All right. Let's see if it shows up somewhere else. Or I'll just do it right here. What's the probability in the game of straight 5-card poker? So you're getting 5 cards. Straight poker is different than draw poker. So I'm trying to use good terminology. Draw poker, you've probably seen if you watch any movies, if you've seen Ocean's 11, Titanic at the very beginning where Leonardo DiCaprio's playing 5-card draw with Sven and a couple of other guys, and that's how he gets his tickets together. But anyway, if you've seen any of those things, the scene in Ocean's 11 is pretty funny. Brad Pitt's like literally teaching poker to real life actors. Like they're actors, I know, but they're like playing themselves, and they're the most clueless poker players ever. One of them is Topher Grace, but he's over there. And if you're watching the show, they're like they know nothing. I mean, truly nothing. And he's playing. I guess he's getting paid to teach him poker, so he's surviving it. And one of the girls playing 5-card draw, she goes, "I'll take 4," and he goes, "No, you'll fold. Like if you ever have to draw 4, your hand is worthless. Move on." And but another guy, like when they finally go to bed, he's like, "All red," and he lays down his red cards, which is not a hand. Like you could have all hearts or all diamonds, but all red is worthless. And they're all high-fiving, and you're like, it's a really funny scene. But anyway, draw poker is when you get 5, and then you make a decision what you want to keep, and then you throw those. If you throw 2 away, you get 2 more. If you throw 1 away, you get 1 more. But straight poker is just you get 5, that's it, make your hand. So it's a much harder to get a good hand. But again, probability is probability. It's harder for everybody to get a good hand. But anyway, if you only got 5 cards, what's the probability of that I get 3 kings and 2 jacks? And then I'm going to change a little bit on you and see if you can hang. I'm telling you what kind to pick, right? So you don't have to say, hey, there's 13 ways I could get that 3 of a kind, because I'm telling you which way I want. There's only one way to get kings, right? So once you know it's kings, how many ways can I get 3 from those 4? 4C3. So 4C3 would be the number of ways to get kings times, and then 2 jacks. I'm telling you it's jacks. You don't have to decide how many ways, whatever. You know it's jacks. There's only one way to choose that kind, and then you want 2 of the 4, right? And you're doing that out of 5 cards. So this hopefully is pretty straightforward. Very well maybe a test question.
Wait, why is it 4C3 instead of like 5C3? And like 4C2?
Because
There's only 4 kings. You're choosing 3 of them.
Oh,
4 jacks. You're choosing 2 of them. 52 cards. You're picking 5. Now, I'm changing the problem now. Tell me what to do. 3. It's not going to be kings. 3 of a kind, and not 2 jacks. 2 of a kind. All right. Now, I didn't tell you kings. So you can get 3 of a kind. How many different ways? Hold on. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just
Go ahead.
It was like,
So I can multiply by 13 because there's 13 different kinds that I could get 3 of a kind from, right?
Yeah.
Now, once I choose that kind, from that kind, I could get it 4C3 ways, which happens to be times 4. Now, for the 2 of a kind, how many different kinds are now left for you to get 2 of a kind from? 12. So there's 12 ways to get the 2 of a kind. Now, what does 13 times 12 really mean? 13P2. Is that okay to have here? Yes. Why? Because 3 queens and 2 jacks is different than 3 jacks and 2 queens. Are you seeing that? 3, like right here, 13 times 12, and I don't even see it really. 13 times 12 is the same thing as 13P2. So whether or not I realize it or not, 13, I am basically saying, hey, the order in which I get these, I choose my kinds, has an effect on the outcome. But that's true, isn't? Like if I say queens and jacks, isn't the order queens, jacks, jacks, queens? Doesn't the order in which I choose to have 3 of a kind, 2 of a kind, doesn't that affect my outcome? Yeah, this guy's got a better hand than that guy. Okay, so I can put 13 and 12 in there this time. I could also go 13C1, 12C1. That's fine too. Now, let me change it a little bit. Right here, this is where it kind of kicks in. What if, right here, I said 3 of a kind and another 3 of a kind? Now, what changes? Okay, so first of all, 4C3, right? Because you're picking 3 of a kind. But will 13 and 12 hold up? It won't.
13C2.
So what I would have to do there is I need to pick 2 kinds, right, to work with. But because I'm picking the same amount of each, if I say, hey, I'm going to work with 10s and 9s, right? Sorry, 10s and 9s. Are 3 10s and 3 9s the same as 3 9s and 3 10s? So the order in which I choose them, it doesn't have an effect on the outcome. So I can't go 13, 12. I would have to go 13, choose the 2 kinds, whatever they are, choose them. And that's a bunch of different ways that could happen. And then once you've chosen them, pick 3 of each. But I have to do that at one time so that it's not 13 times 12. This ends up being 13 times 12 divided by 2. And dividing by 2 is getting rid of half the possible options. And aren't there, for each option, don't you want to get rid of half of them because it's the same hand? So it kind of makes sense that you want to divide by 2. Now, you could also go 13 times 12 divided by 2, but nobody remembers to do that. And if the people that are, I'm going to be really honest, the people that are really intuitive enough to think about that don't have any trouble remembering to go 13C2, typically. All right, how about this? What's the probability in the game of poker that I'm dealt exactly 2 10s, 2 8s, and 1 5? So I'm picking the kinds for you. Do you have to pick them? No, so you just go straight up what? 2 10s, 4C2, so you're drawing 2 of the 4 10s, 2 8s, 2 of the 4 8s, 1 5, 4C1, 5 cards. Pretty straightforward. And totally a question that could happen on your test. All right, what about right here? What's the probability that in a game of straight 5-card poker that I'm dealt exactly 3 queens and 2 other different kinds of cards, which again means the last 2 cards, not only can they not be queens, but they can't match each other. So get started. 3 queens. What's the probability? 4C2. Why don't I say that there's 13 ways to draw 4C2? 4C3. Why don't I say that there's 13 ways to draw 4C3? Because I picked it for you. It's a queen. There's only one way to pick that kind. So great. I've got queens. Queens are off the table. Now, how many ways to get the last 2 cards if they can't match and they're different kinds, yada, yada? Do I say, well, I picked that kind, so there are 12 kinds remaining, and I want one of those kinds. And then there are 11 kinds remaining, and I want one of those kinds. And there's 52 cards, and I'm picking 5. Do I say that? Why not? Because that'd be like me going Jack 10, 10, Jack. That's different. No, it's not. Because I just said 12, 11. And 12, 11 is the same as what? 12P2, which you're saying, without even knowing, it's a permutation. You're saying that the order in which I choose these kinds has an effect on the outcome, but it doesn't. So instead of saying 12, 11, which is 12P2, what do you want? You want 12C2, which picks those 2. And why do you have to do those? Because you had the same number of each. It's all about having the same number of each when you don't know the kinds that you need to do that. Now, what if I didn't say queens? What if I said 3 of a kind and then 2 other different kinds of cards? Why do I not say, hey, there's 13 card kinds. I need to pick 3. Why wouldn't I do that? I do want 3 different kinds, but why can't I pick them all at once? Because they have a different number of them, right? 3, think about it. 3 queens. Let me show you. 3 queens. Jack 10. Isn't that different than 3 jacks? 10 queen. I mean, isn't that a different hand? And I could keep talking about this, right? Because of that, I don't want to put 3 in the mix because 3 is different from those other ones. So I definitely don't want to do that. But I should say 13C1, right? Or just 13. There's 13 ways to get that 3 of a kind. But then right when you get here, because there's the same number, there's 12 left. I want to pick those 2 kinds and then count the ways I can do that. Because the order in which I pick those 2 kinds don't matter. They don't affect the outcome. How about something a little different? Oh, how about number 9? What's the probability that in a game of straight 5-card poker, I'm a dealt a flush? Now, a flush is not about kinds, it's about suits. So if I'm dealt 5, they would have to all be hearts or all be clubs or all be spades. Does that make sense? If they're all the same suit, you could say, well, you could say that there's 13 cards in a suit and I want 5 of them. But I didn't say that it was in hearts or clubs or spades, right? Times 4 or times 4C1, right? So because that could be hearts, I could do hearts plus clubs plus spades plus diamonds, or I can go, it's the same no matter what. So how about just times 4, or even better, 4C, well, not better, but even more analytical, 4C1, because you're picking one of the suits, and then you're picking 13 cards, and then of course, don't forget its probability. Are you with me on this? Hey, do the best you can, but keep in mind, the questions that I'm talking about where you got to do like the 13C2, I've removed those from your test But if you know them, I'm going to give you bonus points. So you're going to get an easier test than past years. And we've really talked about the same stuff. The only difference was I had to cut out a day review. I normally do like 3 days of review sheets, and this time I'm doing 2. Are you with me? And by the way, all the reviews are in there. If you want to do all of them, all the keys are on Schoology. You can still do them to get to practice.
So tomorrow we're just doing a review.
Tomorrow you'll be in here without me. Just do what your assignment sheet says. I've got to give an AP test.
Which one are you giving?
I am reading it to one guy, and I got to read it. Never done that before. I asked the same question, like, no, he just has that provision. Well, I thought about that too, but I don't know. They wouldn't tell me anything. They just said, just read it.
What test is it?
AP Physics. Good, and he gets triple time. I was like, y'all serving me dinner? But the nice thing is AP Physics 1 is an hour and a half. It's probably the shortest AP.
It's like a.
And if you don't know it, you don't know. And if you get timed, unlike a regular scheduled test where you have to sit in there, even if everybody's finished, I have to sit in there and wait. If it's timed and the guy goes, I don't know how to do this, let's move on. I'm like, okay. So sometimes the timed people get done more quickly than the untimed people.
This would happen at the A-Push. Me and Gray Newman were in the room. We finished way before they did.
Yeah, that's what you're telling me. It's crazy. So maybe I'll get out in time for dinner. We'll see. All right, so guys, whatever we're doing tonight and whatever we're doing tomorrow in class or whatever, bring all those questions to me and we'll do a barrage of Q&A on Wednesday when we're here. No, because I didn't take an absence. They're just throwing, your subs are like, if you care, I think Kenna's got 1 period. What is y'all's period? Y'all have, all right, here we go. Health. Ah, cool, Mr. Health.
Yeah, well, and you're giving.
I'm giving this test?
Yeah.
Yeah, for just this period. So, doing all right?
Yep. No more A-Push, so that's great.
You what?
No more A-Push.
You're just chilling in there now?
Yep.
Wow, what do y'all do? That's like 2-3 weeks.
They were supposed to do a warm thing. Just like 5 minutes. That's pretty much all we did.
You know, out west, they don't start until, a lot of times they don't start school until September.
Yeah.
And then they get done January 15th or something like that. Most of my cousins, my nephews and nieces live out in Arizona and Nevada, whatever. So they don't get finished till 12th, 14th of June, but they still take the AP tests. So the teachers are like, what am I going to do with this kid for a month? In calculus, a lot of times, they'll assign them to make a calculus video. And literally, these kids will like, it's so funny because the ones that end up making it to YouTube that get a lot of hits, you'll have like these 4 completely nerdy guys that actually come up with, but they're smart, they'll come up with these legit little rhymes. But it's so hilarious watching them, but they're amazing. Like if you look up AP calculus, video raps, you can watch them for hours. And some of them are awful. Like, and some of them are really fun. There's one that's like, what's the Queen song? They're like, oh my days, oh my days, oh my days. I forget what they, there's one on that. There's a couple of them to like gangster rap songs. And these guys are trying to thug it out a little bit, but they're like, again, they're like these little skinny little wiry geeky dudes. They're hilarious. But I guess if you got four weeks to choreograph and make stuff up.
You listen to Youngboy, Mr.
I do not. I'm not saying I haven't heard him.
Mr.
How long? Is it BOI?
I don't know that. No,
wait.
Oh, no.
young man, why? Sorry, how fast do you think I can read 5 days of statistics in one
How
day?
fast?
You think I can do 5 days of statistics in one day?
You don't watch any of it.
We did not really have much service at the track, so I just couldn't really.
You were there for 5 days, weren't you?
No, but I missed another day for
It's not probability.
probability, yeah, but I missed another day for that evening. So yeah, 4 days.
I don't know, but
I got a feeling I can do it.
got to get on it, man.
I think I can do it.
I would do a lot today.
I got a lot going on today, but I think I can do it. I think I can do it. Maybe not.
I would do a lot today. Hopefully, we can you'll fill in some of that stuff. Because we haven't really done anything new in a couple of days. We've just been doing different kinds of questions. Today, we're actually doing something a little new, but it'll only test it on your as a bonus, which gives you a little bit of a break because it usually costs people 6-8 points on the test. And I moved it to the bonus. So the hardest thing that people have issues with won't be on your test as a question. We're going to talk about that today.
What are your thoughts on cheating?
Don't do it.
What's your policy for retention?
I don't really have a policy. When I have caught people in the past on cheating, I've had a healthy conversation with them about. It's kind of like, to me, it's like any person you ask who has a major drug addiction. If you ask them to walk it back, it usually goes back to something that's pretty minor. You know, nobody ever starts an addiction with this mentality of, I think I want to be addicted to blank. It always starts really minor and it evolves. It's like a gateway to something else. And I think cheating's kind of the same way. It starts out really innocent, like, hey man, what was on the test? Or, hey, can I borrow your homework? Things that you might think are kind of trivial. I mean, truly, they've interviewed students. Most students say that's not cheating. Or that they know it's cheating, but they go, whatever. Like it's not a big deal to them. But, and I'm going to sound like your parent, I know, which you can roll your eyes about, but I don't have a dog in the hunt with you. But just as a caring person, it does evolve. I mean, like with anything, you become more and more desensitized to what you do, and you cheat in this little thing, then you cheat in something bigger. You cheat on your taxes. You cheat at work a little bit. You fudge your books to make your company look better. You cheat on your wife, your husband. I mean, all those things started somewhere, right? It's a lack of integrity. So
like,
I would say that yes, any one isolated thing at the end of the day, if I caught somebody cheating on their homework, do I think they're horrible? Absolutely not. Do I think they're irredeemable? Of course not. Do I worry about do little things like that cascade into bigger things? Of course. Because that's how it happens, right? Nobody ever walked out and went, I think I'll rob a bank today. I mean, they probably started with stealing somebody's pencils and maybe taking some cash out of their mom's wallet. It all starts somewhere, right? I mean, I guess it's possible that somebody's first crime of their life is a major one, but it's not typical. It usually starts out baby steps. So probably just heard more than you wanted there, but that's my take. All right, guys. So couple things. So your test is scheduled for Thursday, right? We have not talked about anything I don't think really new. We've talked about some problems maybe you didn't see. And a lot of times when you ask me those questions and I go over them, I'll go, doesn't really feel like a test question. If that's the case, make a note of that. Focus your efforts on the kinds of problems you see on these reviews. Also, because of the way statistics took up some time, I chopped a review day out of you don't know this, but if you're looking at your assignment sheet, I chopped a review day out. So when you're looking at it, there is on tomorrow, it says review, probability, and counting. And there's another one on Wednesday that says probability and counting. That's a different one. And then there's also one that just says probability that I didn't even list, but it's still in the book. And if you wanted the practice, do it. The keys are on Schoology. So if you're doing these and you're getting them all right, you're probably okay. Now, there are some problems that I did not go back and take off, and I'll show you those today. We're actually going to talk about them a good bit. So I'm hoping that some of you get this right on the test as the bonus question, because you'll add, I don't know, whatever it's worth, 4 or 5 points to your test and maybe have a pretty flashy little probability score. But I took those off. There were 2 questions on your test, on the test from last year, that I just changed and made easier. And on average, most people don't remember. It's probably maybe a fifth remember to how to account for what I'm asking. So they end up losing 2.5, 3 points on each of those questions. That's 6 points on average that most people miss. You will not miss those this year. They'll be a lot more straightforward. And I will show you an example of those today. You'll also see those on the review sheets. But you're going to see those mixed in. And I'm not guarantee you, but I'm pretty confident that most of you, when you look at the key, you're going to see, and you'll know what I'm talking about shortly, but you'll look at it and you're like, wait a minute, I did this. Why is that wrong? You're going to feel that way. And hey, I did it. I literally, truth be told, I think I taught it. It was either 12 years, 15 years. I taught it incorrectly. Unfortunately, I didn't start asking questions on it until the last couple. But I remember I found my error when I went to this program called Wolfram Alpha. I may have told you this, but I typed in, what's the probability of getting a full house? And I looked at my answer and I looked at their answer, and I had something like 13 and 12 in there, and they had 13C2. And I went, wait a minute, 13, 12. 13C2 is not 13 times 12. It's 13 times 12 over 2 when you simplify. And I was like, why over 2? And then I realized what I was doing wrong. And that's the thing that we're going to talk about today. You'll see it in a second. But before we do that, I want to answer any quick questions you might have on probability part 2. Does anybody have any? And we'll look at them. And we'll look at them quickly. Yes, sir.
You call me
Yep.
12, please.
Everybody asked that. So here we go. Glad you're looking at it. 12 is, for the record, a unique little question. And some people don't even know exactly what I'm saying on this question. So let's talk about this for a second. This question says, what's the probability if I'm picking 4 tickets from these 50 tickets that are numbered? What's the probability that I pick them, that they end up being consecutive, right? And consecutive is stuff like what? 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13. Those are consecutive. But you also have to pick them in order. So what that means is not only do I have to end up having consecutive numbers, like you know how when you play cards, you can have a straight, which would be like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I don't have to pick them 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? I could pick them 2, 6, 5, 3, 4. As long as I get them and then arrange them, they're consecutive. But this is saying that not only do I have to end up being consecutive, but I have to get them in order for this to be right? And I'm not putting the cards back when I draw them. So let's think about that. Now, it doesn't say that they have to be consecutive and ascending or increasing. It can also be decreasing. So let's think about that. I like to think about this problem as, well, before I even say that, the thing that makes this problem tricky is not every ticket that I pick can I increase in like for instance, 7. It goes 7, 8, 9, 10, but also go 7, 6, 5, 4. Not every ticket has that ability, right? Like if I pick the number 3, I can go 3, 4, 5, 6, but I can't go 3, 2, 1, 0 because 0 is not a ticket. And since I have to pick them in order, I can't go both ways. Well, that's different, right? Because on some cards, whatever number I pick, my next choice, there would be 2 choices. One to go up, one to go down. Are you tracking with me? But some numbers that I pick, I can only go one way. So the way I thought, and I'll show you 2 ways. The way I initially thought to do this, and I think my key is written like this, is I thought, well, let me count the number of ways I can go in order ascending and then also in order descending. So I thought, all right, there's 50 tickets out there. How many of those 50 could I pick and still be able to increase by 1 all 4? 40 what? How many? 47. Why 47? Because I can't do which 3? 48, 49, and 50. But all the other ones, 1 through 47, I can still do it, right? Because if I go 47, I can go 47, 48, 49, 50. If I go 48, it doesn't happen. 48, 49, 50. So there's 47 ways increasing, ascending, right? 47 ways that I can pick a card on my first choice and still end up getting consecutive numbers, but in order. Now, once I pick that number, how many options do I have for my next choice? 1. And no matter what it is, whether it's 4, 12, 36, or 50, not 50, 22, I can only get the next highest number, then the next highest number, then the next highest number. So the next 3, one way to do that, one way to do the third one way to do the fourth one. Now that's ascending, right? Or I could do what? Descend in order. Now, how many ways can I descend? Pick a number that would still have the ability to descend over the next 3. 47 again, right? Because I can do that with any of them except what 3? 1, 2, or 3. I can do it with 4, right? 4, 3, 2, 1. But I can't go 3, 2, 1, 0 because there's no 0. So there's still all but those 3 or another 47. But once I pick that number, whether it's 4, whether it's 50, whether it's 41, how many ways can I get the next lowest number, the next smallest number? 1, and then 1, and then 1. So this right here tells me the number of ways, which ends up being 47 and 47, which is 94. There's 94 ways I could actually be doing this event. Now, how many ways can I pick 4 tickets from 50 tickets if I'm doing it in order? What is it? How many ways? 50 what? P4, because in order, right? So 50 P4, and you can put a you can put a 50 P4 there. But what's 50 P4 the same as? 50, 49, 48, 47, or the first 4 numbers in 50 factorial. So if you went 50, 49, 48, 47, that's fine. If you put 50, 49, 48, 47 under each of those and made it just 2 separate fractions you're adding together, that's fine too. And the only difference here, and I'm going to rewrite that 50P4 like this just to help with the next question. 50, 49, 48, 47. If I say with replacement, does anything change in the numerator? No. Does anything change in the denominator? What? They just stay 50 something because you're putting it back and you're drawing out of a fresh 50 each time. Y'all seeing that? Go ahead.
Wait, so what would you back for the denominator like with replacement?
Yeah, so if I'm putting it back, then I still have 50 each and every time.
Okay.
And remember, if I'm putting it back, that makes this what? Independent. And what did we say you cannot do with independence? Factorials, permutations, combinations. You can't do that, right? So if I'm putting it back, I mean, technically you can arrange them, I guess. But for each individual choice, because it's the same number in there, you don't get 50, 49, 48, that factorial notation. You get 50, 50, 50, 50. So you would just have 50, 50, 50, 50 in it. Now watch, there's another way to think about it. You could think this way. All right, of the 50 numbers, 1 through 50, how many numbers can I pick? And I can only go one way with my counting. What numbers can I, once I pick the number, like for instance, 2. 2, I can't go 2, 1, 0, -1, right? I can only go 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, right? The first 3 and the last 3. So you could say, hey, there are, I'm redoing this top number, right? You could say there are 6 ways to pick a number that can only either increase or decrease, but not both. And then once you pick that number, there are one way, because again, you can only go in one direction. How many different numbers can you pick? And then on your second choice, you could either go up or down. The remaining what? 44. And of those remaining 44, and I'll give you an example, 12. When I pick that 12, I could go 12, and then I could go 11, 10, 9, or I could go 13, 14, 15. So on my second choice, how many options do I have? 2. But then once I pick that second number and set the direction, how many options for the last 2? 1, 1. Now, what do you get when you add that up? Again, this would be 50, 49, 48, 47 on the bottom. What does 88 and 6 give me? 94, same thing as that. So it's just a different way of thinking about it. But again, not a question that you're probably going to see on your test. but it does check your knowledge of things, check about in order using a permutation. This one was just kind of tough to do because there were so many variations. It's kind of hard to just go. You couldn't just go, oh, 50p4. That just didn't work. Now it worked here. Like how many odd numbers can you get with replacement? No, down here, no replacement. How many odd numbers on 13? Well, how many odds are there from 1 to 50? Half of them. So you could just say, hey, 25, I'm picking 4 of them. If I'm not putting it back, how many total numbers am I picking 4 from? Actually, not P. It didn't say in that order. So 25C4, 50C4. That was pretty straightforward because it didn't talk about in order, consecutive. It just says, hey, give me 4 odds. 4 odds from the 4 numbers. Now, if it had said in order or something, or if they said, hey, what the 4 numbers, blah, 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 or manipulated the wording somehow, then maybe, and by the way, if you did use P's here, or if you did this, I would have to give you credit. Can anybody tell me why? Why that is the same as the C answer, even though it doesn't really look like it at all? Because believe it or not, these are actually the same. Why does all of this work here? What does C's, what do they bring to the table that P's don't? What's in the definition? What does that have in it that this doesn't? The extra 4 factorial. But they both have an extra 4 factorial. What happens to those if they both have the same factorial? They end up canceling, right? So that makes this is the same thing as that. And that's the first 4 numbers in each of those factorials. And you can see that, sorry, 22. You can see that right here. So I would have to take, even though this is probably preferred, this actually, I'd have to give you credit for it because those are the same. And if you wrote it like this, I'd have to give you credit for it. Or if you wrote it like that. Normally, if I did write it like that, I would go, oh, there's 4 odd numbers, but 4 factorial over 4 factorial cancels. So you don't have to count the different ways. Kind of seeing that? Anybody else on any of these? Okay, so I want to go through, I'm looking at probability part 3, and you've already seen a bunch of cards, but there's something I'm introducing today that I want you to pay attention to. And I think instead of actually showing these examples, I'm just going to create an example and show it to you. So right here, I'm just going to, you can put this anywhere, you got a blank spot. But here's the question. How about this? If I have a standard deck of cards, so standard deck, and that's what we've been talking about this whole time, 52 cards, 4 suits, 13 different kinds. Okay, so standard deck of cards, and I want you to find the probability of getting, all right, 3 of a kind with kings. Now, how about 3 of a kind with tens? Another 3 of a kind. 3 of a kind with jacks. 2 of a kind with kings, and 1 queen. And then I'm going to make it hard. Oh, and then I'd probably say something like, if you choose, what is that, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, if you choose 9 cards. So let's just say there was this card game, you picked 9 cards. I want to know what the probability of this happening is. Now, there will certainly be a question like this on the test. Most people get it right. Let's see if you know right now what you would do. So what's the probability of getting 3 of a kind with jacks? How would you count the number of ways that could happen? 3 of a kind. You know it's jacks. Tell me what you're doing. You're counting the number of ways to get 3 jacks from 4 cards, right? Because there's 4 jacks, so 4C3. Okay? So 3 of a kind with jacks, 4C3. All right, let's move on. Sorry, I forgot the 10s. Let's go back up there. How many ways can you do 3 of a kind with 10s? Same thing, 4C3. So there's 10s, 3 of a kind with 10s first, 3 of a kind with jacks second, not that the order really matters. 2 of a kind with kings. So how many ways can you get 2 kings? 4C2. And then how many ways can you get 1 queen? 4C1. And 4C1 is 4. So if you put 4, that's not wrong, but I'm just putting 4C1 in there. And then that accounts for the 9 cards being chosen. So 52C9. You with me so far? Okay, now I'm going to make it slightly more difficult. All right, so what if I said with the 2 of a kind, I did not mention kings? All right, I just said 2 of a kind, but I still want 3 10s, 3 jacks, a 2 of a kind, so some pair, and 1 queen. So how does this change since I didn't specify that the 2 of a kind could be kings? You've now got a bunch of different options, don't you? Now, what can't they be?
Jacks.
They can't be jacks, queens, or 10s, right? No, because think about it. If they were queens, then I wouldn't have 2 of a kind. I would have 3 of a kind. If I have 2 now again, we talked about this, I think, when I was playing cards. One of the great joys of getting 4 of a kind is to just hunt your friend, right? So, and I do it every time. Like you're playing cards, I'll get 4 of a kind, and I'm like, okay, my sole goal at this point is to extrapolate as much cash as I can out of my neighbors, playing it slow, whatever it is. And the pot gets big, and we get to that point where like, all right, what do you got? And more than likely, if he's calling me, he's got a good hand. That's your hope. Your hope is when you have a great hand that somebody else has a good hand, because then they're going to push in some cash, whatever. At that point, you'll hear something like, I got a straight, I got a flush, I got a full house, all of which 4 of a kind can be. And the beauty is when they're like, dude, I got aces full, or whatever. It's just a short way of saying I got a full house of aces. And you're like, oh, man, all I got is these 2 pairs. Bam, bam. And you throw them down in his face, but they're really 4 of a kind. I don't know it's just fun. And then you catch them reaching too. You're like, oh, I got 2 pairs. And they're like, you wait for them to get like out over the table to about grab the money, and you're like, okay. Anyway, it's kind of fun. Whatever. Bottom line is, if I said that if I counted queens as a possibility, then I would have 2 queens and a queen. That's 3 of a kind, right? So I would not call it 2 of a kind, 1 of a kind, except in that little joke that I'm scenario, which is just a joke. So it can't be queens, it can't be jacks, and it can't be 10s. So how many options do I have then? 10C1, or just 10, because is it 10C1, 10? You crunch the math out, 10 factorial over 9 factorial, 1 factorial. So bottom line, stay with me. I know what you're thinking. There are 10 ways to get 2 of a kind. So I would come in here and I would say there's 10, which is the same thing as 10C1. And I actually like that you're saying 10C1, and I'll get to that more in a second. But 10C1, 10 would be fine. But again, there are no more 13 kinds to pick from, are there? All right, now, what about this? What if I didn't say queens? What if I said right here, instead of saying queens, what if I said, I'm going to go ahead and erase that 10 right there. What if I said, and 1 other kind of card? Kind. If I ever say, and another kind of card, then I mean this. And you're welcome to ask me this on a test if you get confused. I will answer that question. But 1 other kind of card, but I'll mention it over and over on this word, means if it's a different, 1 other, I'll probably just say this, and 1 other different kind of card, means it can't match this kind, and it can't match the jacks or the tens. Now, how does this problem change? What? The two of a kind, how many kinds are out there? 11, or 11C1. But once I pick that 11, how many kinds are out there? 10, or 10C1. Because it can't be tens, right? If I were to list all the kinds, can't have tens, can't have jacks. So of the remaining 11 and of the remaining 10, that's how many I could have there. And by the way, if you wrote 40C1 there, it'd be okay because you're only picking one card. But I would advise you not. I would write 10 and 4C1. Think about that as two different options because I cannot write 44C2. 44C2 does not work for me here. There's 11 ways that I can draw two of a kind. There are 10 ways I can draw one of a kind. But sometimes you can combine that when it's just one card because it doesn't change the math. All right, now, here's the thing that makes this hard. What if, and I'm going to point something out, by the way. Of my two of a kind and my one of a kind, I didn't say what kind it was, right? So hypothetically, what if it was, what do I got, tens and jacks? What if it was two kings and a queen? Is that different than two queens and a king? Is that different? Is that a different hand? So I want you to think for a second. If it's a different hand, I certainly want the order in which that happened had an effect, didn't it? And if the order in which I picked those two kinds, stay with me, guys, it's the hard part. Which is not that hard. If you get it, you got bonus points. The order in which I picked those two kinds, one for the two of a kind, one for the one of a kind. The order in which I picked them, did it have an effect on the outcome? Yes. What did you just write here? 11 times 10. Isn't 11 times 10, even though you probably weren't thinking it, isn't that the same thing as 11P2? Because 11P2 is the first two numbers in that factorial, right? So when you write 11 times 10, you're saying that the order in which I do these, two queens, one king, two kings, one queen, had an effect on the outcome, and you're absolutely right. Now hold that thought, and let's come over here. What if I now say three of a kind, and I don't say tens, three of a kind, and I don't say jacks? Now what changes? And this is where people go wrong, and this is the way I taught it wrong for years. How many ways can I get three of a kind? Like how many different kinds do you have at your disposal when you 13? And that's what I wrote. Because there's 13 ways to get that three of a kind. Then how many ways are there to get that three of a kind? 12. And that's what I wrote for years. Well, at least until Wolfram Alpha came around. And then I thought to myself, after looking at that Wolfram Alpha, what is that saying? 13 times 12 is the same thing as saying that, isn't it? But let me ask you a question. Are 3 queens and 3 jacks any different than 3 jacks and 3 queens? I just said they were different. I just said that the order in which you pick those two has an effect on the outcome. It did here because they were different amounts. 2 of one, 1 on the other. But here it's the same amount. 3 of these, 3 of those. I don't want to go 13P12. What do I want to do? 13C12. Because the order doesn't affect the outcome when I pick those. So what I wanted was 13C12. How do I fix that? Well, the easiest way is to not write 13 and 12. It's to come in here and go, wait, because I picked the same amount of those, I've got to choose the kinds first. 13C2. All it does is divide by 2. It literally gets rid of half of what you counted, which makes sense, right? I don't want to count that. So I get rid of half of them. When you do the math on 13C2, you get 13 factorial over 11 factorial, which leaves you 1312 over 2 factorial, which is just a 2. That's what I did wrong for years. And I didn't see it coming. And most examples in the books avoid this kind of stuff because it's above your pay grade. But I don't think it is. But because I didn't have that extra review day or whatever, and I'm missing a review day because I get to give the AP test tomorrow in the afternoon, I'm going to cut those out of your test and just put them as a bonus. And cut the bonus out, which maybe one person in 20 years has gotten. But I put that in its place. So, and by the way, when you looked at this originally, before I wrote that, do you remember it said this? Why can't I go 13, 12, 11, 10, 13, C4? Well, I don't want to do that because these were different amounts, right? The 1, the 2, they were different than these. I do want this to be 11P2 or 11 times 10. These had the same amounts. And because they were the same amounts right there, I can't have 13 and 12. I got to go 13C2. Are y'all with me on that? That to me is the trickiest thing on there. It will not show up on your test. On your test, now I very well may say 3 of a kind, 2 of a kind, 1 of a kind. And if I said something like that, if I said something like, hey, 3 of one kind, 2 of one kind, you could say, oh, well, on the 3 of a kind, there's 13 ways. On the 2 of a kind, there's 12 ways. And on the 1 of a kind, there's 11 ways. That would work because they're all different amounts. And 13, 12, 11 is 13P3. The order does have an effect on the outcome. That's totally fine. So that you're probably going to see. And you're still welcome to go 13C1, 12C1, 11C1 if you want. But you can't go 13C3 on that. Again, why? Differing amounts. And when you have different amounts, order changes, right? Changing the order in which the things happen actually gave me a different hand. Here, changing the order doesn't give me a different hand. All right, let's see if you can see it and catch it in a couple of these. Right here, number 3. This is on probability part 3 cards. Number 3, what's the probability that a game of straight 5-card poker? And by the way, if you're wondering why I say straight, there's straight poker, there's draw poker. Draw poker, we just talked about that. This is last period. If you've ever seen Ocean's 11 or you've seen Titanic, there are scenes on both of those where they're actually playing draw poker, where they get their hand, they look at it, the cards they don't want, they discard some, and they get additional cards in its place. Right? There's scenes at the very beginning of Oceans and the very beginning of Titanic that have that in the play. Bottom line is we're not getting any extra cards. So if it's straight poker, you get the 5 cards, you make the hand out of it, you're done. It's harder to make a good hand because you have less cards. But it's harder for everybody, so whatever. So right here, what does it say? I'm dealt exactly 3 queens. So how many ways can I get 3 queens? Count that. 4C3. So there's 3 queens. I'm getting 3 of them. Why didn't I go 13 times that since there's 13 different kinds? Because I said queens, right? There's only one way to get queens. I can go times 1 if I want, but I didn't have the option there. I told you it was queens. So no, I certainly don't want that. Now, 2 other different kinds of cards. And again, 2 other different kinds of cards means that the last 2 cards not only can't match each other, but they can't match that. They're different kinds. Okay? So the temptation often is to go, well, I've got to make sure they're different kinds. So I can't go 48C4. I see people do that all the time. They go, well, it can't be the 4 queens. There's 48 cards left. I'm going to pick 2 of those 48. What's the problem with picking 2 from the last 48? They could match. I have to make sure they don't match. So the temptation is to do this. 4, I do this. 4 of one kind, 4 of another kind. And then they go, oh, well, it can't be queens, but there are still 12 other kinds for that and 11 other kinds for that. And they do this. And what did I just do when I do this right here? It's wrong. What does that mean? 12 times 11. It means that, doesn't it? So I just said that the order that I do that has an effect on the outcome. Does getting a jack and a 10, is that any different than a 10 or a jack? So you're saying the order doesn't matter. If the order doesn't matter, then I can't have a P there. I need to have a what? And a C there means 12 times 11 doesn't work for me. So I have to go back and get rid of that 12 and the 11 since it was the same number of those. And I have to say, hey, there's 12 kinds to choose from. Let me pick those 2 kinds. And then once I pick the kinds that I'm going to be picking, I want 1 of each. So that kind of goes with both of those. So that's an example of something you wouldn't see on your test this year, but you might see as a bonus. But you are going to see it on your work. So when you accidentally write 12, 11, and then you get to this and you're like, what did I do wrong? That's probably what you did wrong. You're just not going to have to worry about losing points on a test for it. What about this? What's the probability that in a game of straight 7-card poker, I'm dealt exactly 3 kings? So count that for me. 3 kings. How many ways? 4C3, 2 10s, 4C2, and 2 other different kinds. So the other cards have, first of all cards are different, but different kinds means they can't match each other and they can't be kings or 10s. But you're getting 1 of each, right? So the same amount. So how many ways can I get 2 different kinds, first of all? Say it. 11C2, because I've already gotten rid of kings and 10s. So there's 11 cards left, of which I'm going to have 2 of the kinds in play. And then once I know which kinds there are, how many ways are there to pick 1 of each? 1 out of those 4 and 1 out of the other 4. But that kind of modifies both of those. Y'all seeing that? Over 52C7. All right, let's see if you're really on your game. What if on this problem, I didn't say 3 kings, I said 3 of a kind, and I didn't say 2 10s, I said 2 of a kind. And then I still said 2 other different kinds of cards. How could I fix that? Would I go 13C2 to decide which kinds we're going to go here? No, why not? Different amounts. Would I go 13C4 to pick all 4 different kinds? No, differing amounts. Those are different than those. So what are my options here, out front or out in front of both? I can do 2 things. I can go 13 ways to pick the 3 of a kind, then 12 to get the 2 of a kind. Or I could say 13 P2 because that means the same thing. But most people would say 13 ways to get the 3 of a kind, 12 ways to get to the 2 of a kind. But I would not do 13C2 because I have different amounts. Like I did 11C2 because I had same amounts. You tracking? But again, that version would not be on this test, either one, because of I'm making it a little bit easier this year because we have left review. Usually after 3 review days, I can bludgeon you enough to get half of you or whatever right on those few problems. But I just don't, I don't have the time. Not quite fair. What about number 9? What's the probability that in a game of straight 5-card poker, I am dealt a flush? Y'all know what a flush is? All cards, same suit. Now, that doesn't mean same kind. Suits are what? Hearts, diamonds, clubs. And how many cards are in a suit? 13. 1 of each kind of hearts. 1 of each kind. So I'm looking to pick 5 out of what? Out of the 13. So same suit. So there's 13 cards in each suit, and I want 5 of them. Now, did I specify what suit? So that part right here looks pretty good, except that would be the answer to a question like, what's the probability that in a game of straight 5-card poker that I am dealt a flush in hearts or a flush in spades? How do I fix that to make it just a flush period? I could put in a 4. I could say, hey, there's 4 different suits. Let me pick the suit. And then once I pick the suit, how many ways can I pick 5 cards from that suit? And 4C1 also is 4. So you could say times 4. You with me? Sure? All right. Missed a lot of days.
I missed a lot of days.
Got to focus. All right. What about right here? What is the probability that this is a little trickier, more tricky than you think? What is the probability that in a game of straight 7-card poker, so 7 cards you're getting dealt, that I am dealt a flush? Now, a flush, you only play your best 5 cards. So if I had 7 cards and I had 5 diamonds and say a spade and a club, I would have a flush. But I would also have a flush if I had 6 diamonds or even 7 diamonds. So what do I do when I could do it this way or that way or that way? When you start feeling the word or creep in, what does that sound like? A bunch of probabilities added together. So let's do, if I get a flush, you can have a flush getting 5 or 6 or 7. Even though you'd only play 5 of them, you just pick your best 5. And the lowest club or lowest diamond you would toss and not use, right? So I could do that with a 5 or a 6 or a 7. So let's first calculate the probability of getting 5 diamonds. So that would be 5 diamonds. So how many ways can you do that? How many ways can you get 5 diamonds? 13C5. Like half of you are like mouthing the words. You don't want any volume to come out. Be confident. What did I just do? Okay, back to this. So we're doing 5 diamonds. So 13C5, start with that. 13C5. Now, if I pick 5 diamonds, that means the other 2 are not diamonds. Now, when you have not diamonds, does that mean they have to be different kinds? Could they be pretty much anything? So if it doesn't really matter what they are, what are you choosing them from? Every year I'll have somebody go, I already picked 5 of the 52 cards, so they go 47C2. What's the problem with 47C2? They might be an extra diamond. If they have an extra diamond, then I don't have 5 diamonds. I have what? 6 diamonds. So what do I really want to do? Make sure they're not diamonds? How many cards are not diamonds? 39. So you want 2 of those. Or what else could happen? That's getting 5 diamonds. You could get 6 diamonds. So 13C6. But then your other card would be what? One of the remaining 39 that aren't diamonds. Right? So 39C1. Or if, in this case, you could just put 39. Because anytime it's C1, it's just the same as that number. And then the last option, 7 diamonds would be what? 13C7. I don't have to say 39C0. And then all of that I divide by. Y'all seeing this? How about number 6? Again, this would be a good bonus. What's the probability that if I'm playing 5-card poker, I get 3 of a kind and then 2 other different kinds of cards? So how many ways can I get 3 of a kind? Now it's definitely what? I'm picking 3 of a kind from the 4 cards, but 4C3 doesn't quite cut it because of what? I didn't tell you which kind, right? So how many kinds are there? 13. Now, the fact that I don't know the other kinds, should I go just 13C3 and just count up all the different ways? No. Why? Because I'm picking different numbers of each. So since there were no other kinds that I was picking 3 of a kind from, here I can just go 13C1 or 13. Now, for the last 2 cards, the last 2 cards have to be different kinds. How many ways are there to do those? Does this cut it? 12 ways to get the first one of a kind, 11 ways to get the next one of a kind. Does that work? No. Why? Same amount right here. So if that doesn't work, in this case, what would I have to do? I'd have to go 12C2 to pick those 2 kinds from the remaining 12 kinds, because it can't be this one, and then 52C5. And again, that would not be on your test, but it will be on these review sheets. So if you do the work on it and you write 13, 12, 11, and you look and you're like, why did he do it this way? That's why. And you'll have a chance to ask me about that on Wednesday. What do you think? All right, there's 3 review sheets and this. So there are literally 4 full-length sets of questions that you can go through and ask questions about. I would encourage you, even though you're not going to see me tomorrow, unless you come see me before after school. Well, who knows how long this test will take. Even though you can come see me before school, I would really get working on it tonight, especially if you've missed a number of days. Really get on it tonight and really expose what you do or don't know. And then you've got good questions to ask when you see me on Wednesday. All right? Time's running out. You got this week and what? 2 days next week? Yeah, and then we review 3 days and start exams. So we got this week, 2 days next week, 3 days review. Everybody got an exam review sheet in here? Exam review booklet. Who does over here? Yeah, of course. Do it. Can you wait 2 seconds? You hear just my little spiel. Anybody else need one of these? Okay, guys, on this packet, real quickly. If you want to do well on this test, you will do this packet, you will check it, you'll correct it, and if you're wise, you'll redo what you didn't know how to do. If you're foolish, then you'll take this approach. And listen, if you're foolish, but you could choose this approach if you had a 99 average and you need a 60, you're probably going to be fine. Every year I don't grade these for points anymore because it was just such rampant cheating. It just disheartened me. So I don't give points away for this anymore, but when I did, I would find literally people would turn this in, and it was shocking to me because I gave 60 points and I was grading it. But people would turn it in and say there's 200 questions in there. They'd have 110 done. And then they'd get hammered on their test, lose their letter grade. I had one guy drop 2 letter grades once. 2 letter grades. Yeah. In fact, ironically, all he had to do was get this finished and corrected and turned in, and he would have exempted the exam. And he turned it in incomplete. It dropped his grade, so he had to take the exam, of which he hadn't prepared, and he dropped another letter grade. Ended up getting a C instead of an A. But anyway, I digress. Don't do this. I have people every year. I'm not giving you points for it. Does it make any sense to pull this out and to do the ones you know how to do? Well, let's think logically. You already know how to do those. Why would you do the ones you know how to do and not do the ones you don't know how to do? Like literally, your best bet's to look at a problem. If you're going to go that route and go, well, I know how to do that one, I'm not doing it. I'm going to do the ones I don't have any clue about because those are ones I need help on. It makes no sense to do what you know how to do. Literally, you don't get better that way. You don't get stronger bench pressing 10 pounds unless you're really, really weak. Okay? You get stronger pushing yourself beyond what you're capable of. So, if you have a 99 average and you've earned the right to not worry about this exam, dude, I did the same thing. That's not me. That's not stupid. I mean, yeah, you might not be as solid, but at the end of the summer, you're not going to be as solid either. My advice is to spread your time out where you need it. If you got a 99 average and you've earned the right to have a, what is that, 54 or something like that, if you've earned that right, great, enjoy it. I probably wouldn't do much either. And you probably know it if you have a 99 average well enough to do okay anyway. But man, if you have a 91 average, every year I have somebody who has a 91 average and they come in here and say a 92. 92 is a little bit, and they do the math on it and they're like, okay, I have a 10-point cushion. All I got to do is get a B to get an A. And then they make a 76 on it. And they come up to me and they literally have this conversation. Mr. Hurry, I only missed it by 4 points. You have to give that to me. I'm like, wait a minute, you made a C on my exam and you want me to give you an A. Like you're telling me at the end of the year, you know a C's worth of material of which I spoon-fed to you. Told you it was in here. Yes, it's like a Where's Waldo in that there's a whole bunch of other things on this distracting you, but all your questions are in here. They're all in here. All 62 of them or whatever it is. They're right in here, hidden amongst another 150 or whatever. But they're there. It'd be one thing if you were shooting for an A and you needed a 96 on it. If you needed a 96 and you got a 93 and you walked up and you were like, oh, Mr. Harry, I made a 93. Here, first of all, that won't happen. You know why? Because if you had a 96 and you made a 93, I would probably write 96 on it and put that in the book because you did earn an A worth of material. And you never would have known. Literally, I'll even go back and erase some of my counsels off. So if you did go back and look, you would never even know. You would be like, oh, I'm so awesome. You would never even know it was given to you. But like if you make a C, and it happens every year to 1 or 2 people, and you drop a grade, I mean, you made a C on it. I'm not going to give you an A. I don't give away grades, right? So think about what you need. wait till we take this test. We'll get everything in there. I can sit down with you individually during the review days and say, hey, if you make this, you can drop your lowest grade. That'll affect your grade maybe. It's probably the only time of the year where it's great to have a sucky grade. Like if you have like a 87 average and your worst test score is a 60 and it's just dragging you down, that's the time to have a 60 because it's like you drop that, your grade just bumps up a good bit. So we'll look at all of that. But please, if I were you, if you wait till the last second to try to do this, it's going to be tough. If it were me and I had a close grade, like just above or just below, and I was trying to get what I wanted, I would do this once. I would not do any guessing. Do it, check it, correct it. Put big red circles around everything you missed something. Get another review sheet. I'll print as many as you need. Get one, do all the problems you missed. Correct it again. Circle everything you missed. Get another one, do them again. Until you're at a pretty comfortable place, you'll be fine on this test. It's not an overwhelmingly difficult test unless you do nothing. All right? All right. But I promise you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week we'll have for review day. Oh, also, some trophies. Kind of tiny, but third place in Division I. Second place. Those are our state trophies. A little on the small end. Budget cuts, I guess. I don't know. They used to be big and bold and blue in the last couple of years. Shrunk a little. Kind of weak.
It's not that much taller than me.
And then you go to a band competition, you come home with the trophy, can't even fit it in the doorway. Ours. Oh well. That was
Come to class tomorrow. Probability legend.
ink right there.
I do.
It just rub. It might be just.
So there.
You get a little. You get some spit on it.
Shoot through your phone.
Yeah, that's fading.
Thank you, though.
Yep. Is that?
So,
What are you guys doing? Oh, zombies.
There's a signing at 2:30 and line into it. Mackenzie's.
Who?
Mackenzie Yoakum, she's a volleyball player.
Yoakum?
Signing with Seton Hall.
Is your lady? Starting to get a little blush. Is that your lady?
It is.
Is your lady?
Yeah.
Volleyball at Seton Hall, dating an older woman.
Right.
Cougar. Who we missing? Nathan? Is he here today?
Thomas was
Still on the license side?
Sure. I can probably maybe Saturday.
No time this week? Let me check the weather.
I don't think so.
It's all about the weather.
If not, I can find you somebody.
Monthly.
I can find you a trusted individual.
You just get a little 10% off top.
Maybe. If he's cooking, hey man, I got you this job. You're gonna so do that.
Let's see. Let's see. Weather. Daily. Might make it.
Saturday's good.
Might. It's a matter of this week, 1% chance of rain, tomorrow 0, the next 1, the next 0. Friday 10, Saturday 17. 17 is low.
Yeah. If it goes up,
And usually that means late afternoon, you might get some afternoon showers. If it goes up, I gotta have it. I'll do it earlier,
okay.
even if I take a day off.
Okay.
I only need 3.
3 people.
No, I only need, it's 3 pallets. I did 4 pallets by myself.
Okay.
It wasn't an easy day, but it was for myself. The hardest part is when you're doing it by yourself, you're getting it, you're loading it in your wheelbarrow, bring it to where you want it, throwing it down, then you're getting down on your hands and knees. When there's 2 people, you got one guy on his hands and knees
One guy on the wheelbarrow.
and one guy on the wheelbarrow. Or maybe if you have 2 guys, it's even better. You literally just have some guy, he just throws down a row and then he's going back and the other guy's like fitting it, sliding over, fitting it. By the time he's in, the next guy's throwing down another row, fitting it, fitting it. Dude, you can blow through sod quickly, though. Wouldn't be more than a couple hours.
Okay. I can probably find somebody to do. Let's do it.
I would. I got basketball tournament.
Oh yeah, you got a basketball tournament.
Yeah.
Are those
I
trophies
push
for
my
top
commitments to move. So
Yeah, man. You want 'em?
my commitment is moving. So
Do they have certificates or?
Yep. Not giving them out today, though.
Can I go ahead and get
Hey.
that one, Jimmy?
Yeah, sure.
just leave.
Just leave.
Get out of here, Kieran.
All right.
So no chance anytime this week after school?
Probably not. Maybe Wednesday actually.
Can't do it Wednesday. Supposed to go to this retirement thing.
I can try Thursday. I might not have time, but could you do Thursday?
Well, to do it Thursday, I'd have to order the sod today. And then if you couldn't do it Thursday, I'd be screwed. Does that make sense? If you do it Friday, if we do it Saturday, or if we even do it Friday and something came up, I wouldn't be really screwed because granted, you don't want to leave sod on the pallet for longer than a day.
Yeah.
It wouldn't kill you if it was overnight because it's cool,
Wait, would you have to order it today to do it Thursday?
probably. That'd be too risky if you couldn't.
I'm trying to. Yeah, I can't.
But ordering it for Friday,
I couldn't do Friday. I could do Wednesday.
you think you can do Saturday morning?
Yeah, I could do Saturday.
Okay, well, maybe we'll just plan on Saturday morning, just hope it doesn't get worse.
Let's do it.
If it gets worse, I may,
Rush it.
I may just try to do it Friday and just knock it out.
Okay.
Put a headlamp on. I literally was doing that last time.
Wait,
The
like
yards-
at night?
Yeah.
A headlamp on? Gosh.
Not, well, for all the cleanup and the junk afterwards.
Yeah.
But I've got the yard all ready.
Okay.
The yard's ready to just lay it down. Lightly water it, lay it down. Yeah, these are our lovely state trophies.
Nice.
And,
They're small.
yeah, they're kind of wimpy, I think. They need to step up their game. Second place is this little thing this big. It's like, really? I'm like, we spent a lot of, I mean, at least $5, 70, when we had 100 and something people, $600, and all you're going to do is give us, I guess I can,
They pocketed it. They went out to lunch.
tiny little piece of marble. Kind of wimpy. Oh, well. All right, so we got a test on Thursday. I will not be here tomorrow. I have to give an AP exam. There is a shot if the exam starts at like 12ish, but the guy gets triple time when I'm reading it to him. But according to his teacher, it's the shortest exam. It's an hour and a half. So it could potentially take 4.5 hours. But if he doesn't know how to do it, the upside of that, if he's like, I have no idea, then he is allowed to go, I don't need any more time. We're allowed to move on to the next thing.
Like one kid.
It's one kid. I'm reading it to one kid. That's it.
Oh, is that the like?
I don't know. I don't know who it is. Couldn't even tell you who it is. I will find out when I get there. So I actually had 3 kids that were 10th grade that took the APUSH test that got extended time, but all 3 of them were actually finished before the regular group was. And the reason why is because with extended time, they get an extra 50% of time. But if they don't use it, they have the right to go, we're done. So when they all said they were done, like in a normal test administration, if they get an hour and a half, you have to sit there for an hour and a half and wait it out. And you're looking at the kids and they're sound asleep. Nobody's working. And you're like, it's the rules. With extended time, they say that you can stop. If they go, we're done. You can go, great. So they let it. He was back to class before the regular ones. So I'm hoping for that. And if that's the case, I will be here.
That might be extended time on the ACT. Just get extra time on the ACT.
Yeah. But this is different on the.
Yeah, and they just can leave early.
Yep.
And they just let everybody else do that.
The heck.
I was probably sitting there for people always finish the free response early. I think like everybody's doing the free response and you're just sitting around.
My kids took it today. Their test.
Oh yeah.
Some came in. They were like, multiple choice, pretty easy. Free response. They threw it at us, Mr. Hurry. They threw the gauntlet at us. But my bright kids were saying, the brighter ones were saying, I thought it was pretty doable. The weaker ones were like, I don't know. Which is what they always say. So we'll see what happens.
Wait, what even is a free response in calculus? Like a word problem?
Yeah. It usually has like 3 or 4 parts,
Okay.
different things they ask. The multiple choice are just little, most of them are all word problems. Multiple choice are little bitty right or wrong answers. The other ones are show your work, show your setup, show your process. All right, guys. So we're jumping back to finance. I'm jumping back to classwork. I want to talk about a couple things. If you get with your work on me, I'll get your work out. I want you to focus out real quickly on number 8 and 9. Quickly, what we did number 8, I believe, in class about Biff graduating. Remember, he invested for 10 years, but then he had to stop investing. And when he stopped investing, he decided to leave that money in the account. And what did we figure out?
He made more because he invested early. So he made more than the lady who like waited 10 years. He made like double.
Yeah, over double. So this guy right here invested for 10, but just left it in there to grow. Kind of like he planted a tree and he tended it for 10 years, whatever, and then he walked away. This girl, a friend of mine, she skipped the first 10 and then had to invest the same aggressive way that Biff did for his first 10, but never did again. She had to invest for 30 years. And if you saw her number, it was like a little over a third of what Biff's was. Bottom line is, like I've been mentioning over and over, this is so weird having 4 people in here. If you skip 10 years, you're killing your retirement. I mean, just killing it. And it's at 10 years. And people that end up being like big time surgeons that go to undergrad and then they go to become a doctor, like go to med school, then they do their residency in general, whatever. Then they do their extra residency, like they're going to be a lung surgeon or a brain surgeon or a spinal surgeon. Sometimes they go 8, 9, 10 years in school. They're behind in their retirement. Now, the upside is they're also a very specialized doctor. And if they're good at what they do, they can make that up and then some. But they are significantly behind in their retirement and getting that nest egg in there. And it will cost them millions of dollars, but hopefully, again, they'll be able to put way more than that minimum away and make up for that. But it does take time. And they more than likely have 10 years of college they got to pay off as well, which I know my ENT guy, ear, nose, and throat guy, he's 52, and he just paid off his student loans to Tulane about 2 or 3 years ago. He told me, he goes, I only made my last payment. And I think he was paying $600 or $800 a month for like 20 or 30 years to pay off med school. I mean, it was a significant amount of money he was paying off. And that money's not being invested, right? Now he's invested, I mean, granted, I'm not worried about it. I mean, he's got a lake house, a big house in Vestavia, whatever. So, and his wife, this is fun. His wife's dad has 3 kids. One of them's her, and he's easily worth $100 million. So the rich just get richer. Like he is this massive real estate magnate in Montgomery, Alabama. Owns like zillions of buildings, furniture stores, restaurants, whatever. Anyway, the best case scenario is be both of them. Be Biff, who invested for 10, and be a friend of mine who invested for the last 30. Put that together. That's what you could have. You could have that 3.1 and that 1.6 or whatever this is. You could be sitting on 4.7 doing that over a 40-year period and really put yourself in a great spot. And if your wife was, in this case, if your wife was doing the same, or whatever, was doing the same thing, then you would have even more. So, and again, it's not about being rich to me. I'm a school teacher. Good night. I'm in front of trees. But it's about just being wise, getting that money away, preparing for your future, and get yourself a position to be generous. I was telling first period, I had a grandmother-in-law, she's passed now, but when we were pregnant with our 3rd child, we got the car seat, and I was like, I'm gonna go check out the car. So I went down, we had this little black 4Runner at the time, and I went in there to put the car seat in the 4Runner, got it in there, strapped up there, went to shut the door. She was our 3rd kid, the door would not shut. Like 3 seats across, I couldn't shut the door, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we got a child coming in 4 weeks, and we don't have a car that we can all get in the car with them. Yeah. We're like, crap, what are we gonna do? So I started shopping for Tahoes. And I was at the time, it was 2002. I was looking for like a 1999 Tahoe. You know, I didn't really want to spend full price, whatever. Back in the day when a used car was actually cheaper than a new car. But anyway, my grandmother-in-law at the time came up to me, and she passed away probably 6 years after that. And she just saw me looking through the I don't even know whether it was the paper or whether I was looking through online. She goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm looking for a car for us. We need a little upgrade, a little bit bigger vehicle for the 3 kids." And she goes, about 2 weeks later, she calls me and she goes, "Hey, I want you to go to the dealership, find a Tahoe that will fit y'all's needs that you're really excited about, and then get them down as low as you can and give me a call. And tell them I'm going to come up there this coming Saturday." Right? So I went down to the dealership. I'm like, "That's the car." Went down to the dealership. I figured that she maybe put a down payment on it for something like that, kind of get us. She went down there and bought us a brand new Tahoe. Wrote a check for cash, handed us the keys, said, "Mary," I don't even know what day it was, "Mary, March 1st or whatever." She did never live extravagantly. She did pretty well on some real estate, had a little country store in New Brockton. Didn't waste money, always had a Cadillac, but her house was nothing special. She loved a caddy. But she literally was a blessing to us because she was wise with her money and her investments, or she and her husband were their entire life, put herself in a position to really help us in a spot where, back in 2002, my wife's art business wasn't kicking. She was doing okay, making $25, $30 a year part-time, which is not bad. She was able to stay home with the kids, whatever, but it wasn't anything huge. I was a school teacher money. We were just kind of getting by. Buying a car would have been really a stretch for us at that point with 3 kids in diapers. Handed us the keys. That's a great thing to think about when you start investing. You could put yourself in a position to really help people in your family that might need a little boost. Anyway, and then all of this is just talking about all this. I want to hit up a couple other questions. This right here, I wanted to do this with you. So get your calculators out. And the question at the end, that's the key. The question is, how much does this house really cost Biff? So I want you to come in here, and I'm going to fill it in for you, and then you're going to type it all in. Go back to your program, but let's fill it in. The house costs $280,000, which means it's not in Homewood, and you made a $50,000 down payment. So how much was your loan for?
$230,000.
No. The house cost $250,000. You put $50,000 of your own money. Basically, you paid it to the buyer, so you needed to borrow another $230,000 from the bank. And when you borrow from the bank basically just writes the other guy a check, and you owe the bank. The bank owns the house at this point. You put a down payment on it, so you own like a little tiny piece of it. But if you owe them the money, then they technically own the title, have the title to the house. So your present value of your loan is $230,000. Your interest rate was 6.15. But you made a $50,000 down payment. So you paid the guy already for $50,000 of the house. So you subtract that, but you still owe $230,000 because that's what a down payment is. It's a payment to the buyer that says blah, blah, blah. And it says to the bank, hey, the bank doesn't have to loan you as much money. So if the bank needs to foreclose on you because you don't make your payments, they don't have to get back as much out of the house, which enables them to sell it more quickly, get their money, and run. It's a monthly payment, so PPY is 12. So I'm also going to have 12 up here, 30-year payment times 30. What should you assume about the compounding? That it's the same as the PPY, right? And your future value, we want it to go to 0. And we always make payments at the end of the period whenever we're dealing with a loan. Now, I want you to calculate the PMT on this, and I want you to tell me what you get.
Negative 1401.22.
Negative. So you basically, I know the negatives in there showing cash flow. So you have a 1401 and 22, we'll call it 22-cent payment a month. Now here's my big question for you. How many months did you pay that payment?
360.
So you basically paid a $1,401.22, 360 times. Can you tell me what the house really cost you?
Like 400 grand.
Try again. This is what your house really cost you.
Ooh, $500,000. So is that what happened in 2008? Everybody freak is out.
No, this is what happens every day. What happened in 2008 was banks were so free with their money, they would let anybody borrow. You could have horrible credit, go in there and borrow money because the federal government was backing it up. And they're like, the Fed's backing it up. What do we care? We'll loan it to anybody. They're paying us interest, right? And then they started giving no down payment loans, or they started doing interest only loans. So interest only means the only thing that you had to do was pay back the interest rate. So like if the interest rate was 4%, you'd have to pay back 8 or 9 grand a year, but you didn't even have to pay off the house. You could just pay the interest rate forever. And you're like, well, why would you want to do just pay the interest rate? Houses were appreciating in value so quickly. There were people like you'd find, and there's a scene in this in The Big Short, that movie. There's a scene where this waitress, they were talking to her and she goes, yeah, I have 3 properties here in South Florida. They're like, 3? Aren't you a waitress? She goes, yeah, but you just go buy the properties. They're going up in value. I buy them, hold on to them for a year. I don't even rent them. And then I just sell them. And I've made $150,000, $200,000 a piece off. The property values were going crazy. So all these people were buying up these properties and selling them. I mean, literally, I had friends once that this woman was asking $960,000 for her lot down at the beach. They offered her $960,000. She raised the price on them. And they're like, well, you asked $960,000. We're giving you asking price. And this happens all the time now in Homewood. And then she was like, well, if you'll give it to me, I figured I could get more. And they're like, well, what do you want? She goes, $1,050,000. They're like, so they literally paid her $1,050,000. But literally, that's how fast the housing market was moving up. People were literally like, oh, well, if they'll give me this, then surely somebody else will give me more soon. And they were right. But the second it peaked and started to drop, all these people with these mortgages, they now couldn't sell their houses as the market was dipping. Because if they sold them, they went at a loss because they didn't even have a down payment on them. Literally, as soon as the market dropped, the house was worth less than they owed. So what did they do? If you are really a person of integrity, I say arguably, but I don't know. If you were like, nope, I'm going to sell it, but I'll pay the bank back what you owe, and they take money out of their pocket, people are like, screw that. I'm just going to walk away from the loan. I literally don't have any money in the loan. Nowadays, they have you put a down payment or have mortgage insurance. People didn't even have any money in there. So they didn't have a down payment. Like if Biff walks away right now and doesn't pay anything, they're going to sell this house maybe at $250,000, $260,000. They're going to keep the $230,000 they have, and they're going to give back to Biff the $10,000. He just lost $40 grand of his down payment. But if Biff didn't have a down payment and he walks away, what repercussions are there for Biff? None, except his credit's trashed, which means he can't buy a house. But in a housing market like that, they didn't even care. They're like, I don't want to buy a house. They're only going down and die. Everybody started walking away from their loans. And who was covering the loss? Federal government. Everything tanked.
That makes sense.
It just was a disaster of biblical proportions. And here's the crazy thing. All the banks that were doing these faulty loans, these terrible loans, and that had very high-risk portfolios, they were taking this money and putting it into loans instead of balancing out their spreadsheets and putting into other investments that have security for their nobody went to prison. Millions of people were breaking the laws of their own ethics in their company by instead of diversifying their portfolio, which is essentially what I do. Like when I buy an ETF, I buy in the S&P. So every time I buy one share, I'm buying a piece of 500 companies, right? But I don't, like at that time, I could have sold all my stock and gone and just put all that money into housing. I could have bought houses. I mean, think about that. I could buy this house and don't put any money down. Sit on it for 6 months and just pay the interest payments. And then somebody else buys it from me for $340. I just made 60 grand. I literally didn't put any money at risk. People were doing that left and right. I had friends that would buy like 4 condos that weren't built. They weren't even built. The developer goes, hey, I'm building a condo here in Florida. And people would start buying up the units. They would buy the units up because maybe they knew the builder or knew somebody who goes, hey, I'll get you in early. And they would buy the units. And then as the condo started going up, people were like, ooh, this is a real thing. Hey, how much are these units? And the guy who bought 4 with no money down goes, I'll sell you one. So he bought the unit for $250, sell it for $3. Bought the unit for $180, sell it for $250. People were printing money until they weren't. And when they weren't, they got bludgeoned. They just got stuck with it. I told you, my friends, my friend Scott and Jeff and Scott's dad, or maybe it was Jeff's dad, I forget, but the 3 of them went on that deal. So they were both in it for $330 a piece, $330,000 a piece. They ended up walking away from that house and everything that they had put in it, their down payment, which was not a big down payment because again, the time, but their down payment and all the money they put in it over 2 years, they walked away and just took a loss. I mean, think about a payment on $1 million property. That's not small, right? They paid on it for a couple of years and then just walked away. The house and the lot wasn't even a house. They couldn't even enjoy it. Like while they were sitting there making payments on it, they couldn't afford to build a house on it. The market was to crap. All their stocks were to crap. Everything was to crap. And they just ate it. And it took years for them to recover. One of them's in pharmaceutical sales and manages a bunch of stuff. So he was making great money. The other guy was owned a pharmacy and did some, we call it pharmacy pimp work, but did some work like that, actually made some decent money. So they recovered, but dude, their credit was trashed for years. They didn't even think about buying a property, think about doing anything. Banks wouldn't even look at it. But anyway, I wanted you to see that. Basically, this was his payments on 230. So add that to the 50 down payment. This guy spent $554,000 buying this house. Now, this is the magic I want you to see. Watch this. What if I change this from a 30-year loan to a 15-year loan? So watch this. What if instead of doing this over, I tell you, we'll just do 20. No, we'll do 15. A 15-year loan. Now, I'm cutting the time I'm going to make my payments in half, right? In half. So what would you think that would do to my monthly payment? It almost seems like it would double, right? If I cut the number of payments in half, now instead of doing 360 payments, I'm doing 180 payments. You think, oh, you cut the payments in half, then you're going to double your payment. Redo it with 180 and then instead of 360. What does it do to my payments? Instead of 1401, you're what?
Yeah, it's $600.
Instead of 1401, which is what it was, right? So at 30 times 12, it's 1401-ish dollars. But at 15 times 12, it's 1959. So really, and now what does it cost me? Think about it. Now if I do that times 180, 1959 times 180. How do I get out of here? Escape. 1959.55 times 180. Now what did the house cost me? That's a lot less than 504, isn't it? Because how much did the house cost me this way?
500.
That was 504,439. So look at the difference there, guys. So if you're able, a lot of people go, you know what? I'm going to pay this sucker off. Like a lot of people do this with rental properties. They'll go buy a property that they have full intention of making a VRBO or a rental or something like that. And they'll rent it, but they'll make the mortgage a 15-year mortgage. And they'll just say, hey, if I can just suck it up and pay the mortgage, yeah, sometimes I'm going to have some big expenses. Maybe I can do the work myself. But if I can get the person living in the house to basically pay the mortgage, right? And I pay it off in 15 years. Like say I did that. I'm 54. I have plans to do that actually. I'm 54. If I were to get a little rental home and I rent that thing, whether it's here in Birmingham, Birmingham would be preferred. I would prefer that because I could maintain it from here because I can pretty much work on houses, do most things. If I pay it off in 15 years, then I'm 69 years old and I have a property that's paying me $1,900 a month. I get an extra $2,000 a month in income forever, right? I mean, that's huge to have little rental properties or something like that. That's a great investment strategy to get something like that paid off. If I put a 30-year loan on it, dude, I'm dead. 84, maybe I'm still kicking, but there's a good chance I'm dead before I ever see it. My kids will be happy because they'll have these little rental properties that they have that they can continue to make money off of. And then there was one other thing I wanted to show you on this, and that's this. What if, watch this. What if your payment, right? It's supposed to be $1,401. I'm back to the original problem. So this is back to the original problem, right? And you're paying, I want you to see this because I have friends that do this. I went ahead and paid my house off. I had 13 years left on it. My wife and I were like, you know what, why don't we just knock it out? We'll pay it off, we'll be debt free. And about a year and a half ago, we paid off all of our money. So literally, we live in a house, we pay the utilities, the property tax, we don't have any payment on our house anymore, which is awesome. Because that's like that's like an increase in my salary. But right here, look what happens right here, right? This is what I was paying a month. What if I just pay an extra $200 a month? I'll just call it an even $1,600. Put that in there and figure this out. What does this end up being? So I'm going to get rid of this and say, what if I just increase my payment by I'm going to go down there, increase that to $1,600. Make it negative $1,600, by the way, because you got to change the cash flow. Go back up to your N.
It's like a little more than 2.
And that becomes 261, right? So this turns into 261.06. Divide that by 12. Divide out the PY on that. How many years? So I'm going to take that 261.
More than 20.
So 261
22.
divided by 12. 21.75? What did I just do? By paying just a measly
Cut 10 bucks. Or 10 years, sorry.
I cut, roughly a little over 8 years, just by $200 a month. I have friends that do that. They make one extra payment a year. That cuts about 2 or 3 years off. Just one extra payment, right? So basically I make an equivalent of, or maybe it was 4 years. I basically make an extra 2 years of payments and I cut 4 years off. I make an extra $200 a month and I cut 8 years off. And that way, at least you're not forced into paying. Like I can always pay $1,401, but I pay a little bit extra, I have people do that all the time. They'll go in there and they're like, man, I just got a $10,000 a year raise. $10,000 a year, I get an extra $1,000 a month-ish, maybe an extra $800 after taxes, right? Maybe not that actually. Maybe an extra $600 after taxes or something like that. And they go, you know what, $600, we're going to take $300 and enjoy it. And I'll take the other $300 and I'll just pay an extra $300 on my mortgage. And dude, the mortgage is paid off. Yeah, maybe in 15 years. It's amazing what little bitty things like that you don't really think about can knock your mortgage down and put you in a position maybe to retire earlier. I mean, if I'm paying $2,200 a month in a mortgage payment and I want to retire, do you know that when I retire, my salary drops $1,800 a month? That's my mortgage payment. Literally. I can literally live the same way I did a year ago, retired doing nothing as I do right now because I don't have the mortgage payment. Now, I'll still do stuff. Who knows? I may have a full-time job, may just do a bunch of odds and ends, may come in here in the morning, teach a little. If I come in here and teach in the morning 2 periods a day, I literally get a raise over what I'm making this year. How bizarre is that? I don't make as much money, but my take-home pay is increased by $300 a month if I retire and teach 2 classes in the morning. Bizarre. But again, you've earned the right to be able to do that if you've worked somewhere and you've saved your money and put that stuff away. But anyway, these are all things I want you to understand or at least see. You've got your handy dandy TI Inspire with you. How many times, well, you don't know this, but this is what happens. You go to a car dealership in a normal world that hopefully we'll be back to in a couple of years maybe. But a normal, you walk in there and they're like, hey man, what can I do for you? And the cheesy salesman walks, not that he has to be cheesy, but he comes up to you, what can I do? And you're like, well, I'm looking for a car. How much you got a month to spend? If you got that guy say, that's not the question you need to be asking. The question is, what am I willing to pay for this car? Because I can spend $355 and do a 2-month loan, or I can do a 2-year loan or a 7-year loan. They can stretch the loan out really far and sell you a car it's about the price of the car. Get the car and then decide, what are you willing to pay? How much are you willing to pay a month? Figure that out and take your formula and work it backwards. If you're willing to make a $375 at 6% interest, payments 12, whatever, figure out what the present value of your loan is. And then don't go looking for cars that are higher than that, because then you're just going to buy a car you can't afford. And keep in mind, if you buy a used car, there's a pretty good chance it's going to start breaking down before you've paid it off. So now you have 2 payments, right? At least on a new car, if you did buy a new car, it's probably not going to break much. And it's insured probably for those first 3 years or 36,000 miles or whatever. Another thing I wanted to show you was kind of this. Yeah, this was kind of the same thing. Watch, War Eagle. I was really bored when I made this worksheet. He's paying, watch, $1,207 is his payment, right, per month. Purchased it for $191, so my present value of the loan is $191. But remember, one of those numbers has to be negative. I'm going to make the payment negative. Blah, blah, blah. So he 30-year mortgage at 6.5%. Paid it down to 0, compounding interest, monthly payment at the end of the period. So if you did all this, had all this in there, you would have found that your payment was $1,207. Okay? So what did War Eagle do? He said, you know what? I'm not going to pay that. I'm going to go ahead and make a little bit bigger payment. $1,500. All he did was increase it $293, $292, $26. Look what that does. If I increase it to a negative $1,500, what does it do to this? To that 30-year loan? Type in those numbers. Menu 8-1. Go in there and type in 6.5, 191, negative $1,500, future value 0, 12, 12, and what does that do to my number of years? 216.637. 216.637 divided by 12. That's 18 years when I divide that. 18.05 years. What did I just take off that 30 year? 12 years. All I did was kick in an extra 300. Now listen, you might be in a position where you're like, $300, man, I don't have 300 extra bucks a month. Well, then don't do it. You can comfortably pay 1207. You're just going to pay them a long while. That's okay. But if you did it this way, you know, and even if you sell your house before the 30 years, so what? You're still going to be making up some of that money, right? You may not know this, but in your first year of paying off a loan, when you're writing checks for $1,800 and $2,000, that check is very little principal. It's almost all interest. Your very last couple of years, that check is almost all principal, very little interest. So in those first couple of years, you're not even making a dent. I remember looking up after 5 years of paying off my loan. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, go back to this problem right here. Okay, I'm going to go back to the original problem. 30-year mortgage times 12. Watch this. 6.5% interest. Present value, $191,000. Make my payment. I'm going to do back to 1207. 1207.74. Future value, payments per year, compounding per year, end. Guess what that is right there? The future value, if I change that right here, 30 to 1 year. I want to look at this. So I'm going to go menu 8-1. I'm going to change that to 1 times 12, 6.5, 191, negative 1207. Future value, I'm going to skip that 1212, and I'm going to come back down to future value. Check this out. 188,859. Look at that. How much did my loan drop? How much did I essentially pay off on my loan? 191,000 minus 188,859. After 1 year, get this. What you owed went down $2,141. You still owe $188,851. But how much did you actually pay? You made $1,200 payments. You spent $14,000 on your first year of payments, and all you did was decrease that by $2,100. $12,000 you spend in your first year just in the interest expense. Ouch. And every year, the amount you spend in interest will drop a little versus what you actually knocked off your principal. It'll start to switch. But man, wouldn't you want to like shorten the time you're going to pay that interest? If you can ever get away with a 15% loan, I mean, a 15-year loan or a 20-year loan even, do it. I mean, both of my mortgages have been 30 years. I have, because I'm a school teacher and do what you got to do. And I wanted to make sure I could still fund my retirement. But if you ever can get a little extra and you put it towards that, knock that payment, the sooner you get out from under that, man, it's just like it's an income producer. Because by it, you not owing on it, you have extra money that you can invest and do other things with. Right? Anyway, that's kind of where we are, guys. There's a couple, your homework. Okay, here's the rest of our week. There's a really good chance I will not be in here tomorrow, barring a miracle, because I'll be giving that test. But if I am here, whatever. Your job is you can work on this finance homework. If you look at your assignment sheet, we are done. I do want to talk about one more thing, which I'll do on Wednesday if I'm not here tomorrow. I want to talk, and actually I'm going to talk a little bit about, I got 10 minutes. I want to talk about the stock exchanges. I want to answer any questions you might have, talk about the difference between bonds and mutual funds and things like that. Be more specific. I'm going to start on that today. Any random questions that you have. But at this point, here's what your week ought to look like. You ought to begin knocking this homework out right here, making sure you understand how to use your calculator well. Look at the review sheet tomorrow in class. So this is tonight. The review sheet tomorrow, hopefully you'll run in. If you run into anything, you're like, I don't know the answer to that. Circle it. Ask me questions about it Wednesday. And then we'll have our test on Thursday or Friday. I probably am going to make that flexible for you guys. None of y'all are taking physics C. One of you is in biology. One of you is in physics. So if you have biology, I won't be here tomorrow, probably. Who has biology?
Kieran does.
Is that Kieran? So Kieran won't be here. I'll probably give him the right to take it on Friday. Honestly, I don't care. Probably if any, I mean, you can take it on Friday, I guess. But who has physics 1? That's you. So you won't be here on Thursday. So if you want to take it on Friday, you can. If you're really ready and want to take it on Thursday, you can. But that's all I have for the rest of this week. And we're going to have all of next week for exam review. That's it. So we're almost done.
And then we take exam Monday, right?
And then you take your exam on Monday. So you'll have a 5 exam. Now we might play kickball on one of those days. Kind of feeling that maybe. Since we have 5 days and we don't need 5 days, we need like 3. By the way, have I given you your exam review packets?
Yes.
I did give it to you? I must not have given it to you last time. All right. So here are a couple things I wanted to talk about with the time we have left and then with any time we have remaining in here. So I want you to jump back to probably page. It's me defining all these terms and stuff. So go to where you see the word principal at the top of your page. It's probably 119 or 117. No, 118 or 120. What page is it for you? The principal's at the top. 118 or 120?
It's 116.
116? Okay, 116. Scroll down a little bit for bond. I just want to talk about bonds for a little bit. In most people's heads, if they've heard the word bond, it's like government bond. And yes, like if you've seen Captain America. Captain America went around selling bonds for the war, right? For the war effort. And basically what he was trying to do is get people to like give the federal government $100 and the federal government would go, hey, hold this bond for 20 years. At the end of 20 years, I'll pay you $200, which is really not that great of an interest rate, but people used to do that. I remember having a government bond that when I turned 18, that my grandfather gave me when I was like 4, it's a $100 bond. And when I turned 18, it would be worth $200, guaranteed. Now, if you hold it longer, it continues to grow. So I held it until I was 22 and I finally cashed it in. I think I got $230 for it, which back then was like a nice little chunk of money to do whatever. But there are other kinds of bonds. Like, for instance, I owned a bond in Coffee County, Alabama, South Alabama. There's a county down there, Coffee County. And they were always, everybody in Coffee County was having to drive south to Enterprise if they had a baby, if they had an injury or whatever. And they wanted to build a different hospital that was more centrally located. Or maybe they were having to drive to Dothan an hour away to have a baby. And they're like, we need a hospital. So they wanted to build a hospital in Coffee County around Enterprise. And Enterprise is a decent sized small town, if you don't know anything about Enterprise. Anyway, they didn't have the money for it. So they had a bond issue. So they went around saying, hey, if you would give us, $1,000 or $10,000 or whatever, we'll give you 8% guaranteed interest. Well, 8% back then was pretty good interest. It's actually tax-free also. So I owned like $20,000 of these bonds. They're pretty great. And for years, I would get 8% interest off that. Well, as the rates dropped, my rates didn't. So the hospital was still paying me 8%, even though the bond sales were all selling at like 3 and 4%. Well, bonds that usually have what they call a call, a call provision, and the call provision allows them to go, all right, we can call the bonds back to us by just paying you what you bought them for. So I've been getting 8% on my money all these years, which was awesome because the market wasn't even producing at that time at that rate. Well, they eventually got up enough whatever to get the money, buy the bonds back from me, and then I was left without the bonds, but just with whatever my original purchase price was, which was fine. At least all those years I got 8%. That's a bond. Bonds are a little different than stocks in that bonds you're actually buying you literally own a portion of that hospital. So if the hospital was to fail and go bankrupt, what would happen is the bond owners would come in there and sell off the building and sell off the equipment and sell off everything had to do with that place and then liquidate all the money and split it amongst the bondholders, which would be something. But usually you buy safer bonds that you don't feel like are at risk, that are rated really high, like AA, A, whatever bonds. Not a lot of people invest in bonds, but older people like them because they have like guaranteed income. And if the government's issuing the bond, it's really guaranteed by the federal government, which right now that seems kind of shaky since we're so in debt. But you'd like to believe if the government fails, we have far worse worries. Anyway, that's kind of what a bond is. And I will ask you a question about a bond, but it'll probably be matching or fill in the blank. Like I'll give you this definition. In finance, a blank is a debt security, blah, blah, blah. And you'll have to know that that's a bond and not a stock. Okay. A money market fund is kind of like a stock, but it's like you're owning these $1 shares. And it used to be money markets would pay you like 3%. So you might get 3% on your money versus no percent on your money or whatever. So a lot of times if I had money in a checking account or whatever, I would keep a little bit in the checking, but I might put everything else in a money market fund. And you can write checks off of it. It's very liquid or whatever. But right now, I don't know that there's a huge advantage of having a money market fund versus anything, but it used to be. But you can read up on that. That'll also be tested. A stock is something like, let's just say Xander owned a pastry company and he made this pastry that was like just amazing. And people were flocking from all over the country to eat this pastry, right? It's just awesome. And then, well, we'll go with that example. And pretty soon Xander's like, man, I can't keep up with demand. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go public with my company. Everybody loves this thing. And if I go public, which is hard to do now, to initial public offering, it's basically saying he's going to start selling shares of the stock. And since he's so well known, Krispy Kreme did this a few years back, like 20 years back. They were a privately held company. And they thought, if we sell stock, they had places all over the country, but they were privately owned by one guy or one family or something. They decided to go public and sell this stock all over the country and raise millions of dollars to make more Krispy Kremes. So they did that. They raised all this money by selling these sheets of paper that said, you own a share of this company. People, I think the offering came out at $15 a share. The price quickly jumped to $30. A lot of those guys made money right out of the gate.
Sound like Airbnb too, right?
Oh, the company Airbnb? Yeah, a lot of times. I mean, lots of different companies. I mean, everybody has at some point had it. It happened with Facebook. I remember when Facebook initially went public and it went from a privately held company that was worth millions to a multi-billion-dollar company overnight. And the reason why it took so long to go public was because that big lawsuit that they talk about on the movie, the Facebook movie, he was waiting to pay those guys off. So he paid them off that he stole the idea from, paid them their $66 million or whatever. And then shortly after that went public and his $1 million valuation turned into a multi-billion-dollar valuation. The rest is history. But anyway, stock is this inanimate object. It's a sheet of paper that says you own a share. And with that share, you can vote on certain things. But unless you have controlling shares, your vote really isn't worth much unless you pool it with other people's votes, that kind of thing. And that's kind of what Elon Musk did. He finally bought up enough of that. He basically said, I'll pay you this amount for every share and basically bought the company. I think he wants to turn that into a private company and not be public anymore. So he owns it all. So it's now all privately held. It won't be traded eventually. I guess I don't know when it goes through. Now, a mutual fund is what most of you will do if you're, well, not this mutual fund, but the idea of a mutual fund is rather than buy one stock or one stock or one stock here, whereas if that one stock tanks, your whole portfolio tanks or 1/4 of it tanks, you will buy a fund that has a bunch of different companies involved in it, which is a mutual fund. The only problem with the mutual fund is it's managed by somebody. Now, that person who manages it might be brilliant, like a guy like a Warren Buffett. It might do really well for you, but he's going to get paid whether the stock's down or whether it's up, typically. So you're going to pay this commission to him for him to manage it. Another down thing about a mutual fund is if the mutual fund guy decides to sell part of what the fund is invested in, he goes, you know, I'm sick of Apple. I'm selling it all. You might have to pay all the gains for Apple. You might have to pay all those gains in a year where you've made a ton of money, which jacks up your price of, you don't have basically control over when to buy and sell. So you might have to pay capital gains tax in times when you don't want to do it because you don't have the control. Even if you own this, you might own the mutual fund and you go, I didn't sell my portion, but the guy who was managing it sold it. So what a lot of people like to do is instead of doing that, they pick an index fund or an ETF that mimics the S&P or that mimics, which we'll talk more about those tomorrow or whatever, that mimics one of the fund, like a bunch of funds, but it's electronically traded. It's not managed. If I bought an ETF for say $50 and I held it for 30 years and it grew to 1,000, I never have to pay tax until I sell. So I'm not at the mercy of a mutual fund manager who buys and sells when he feels like it. I'm in control. So if I have a down year and I want to sell off some of those stocks and pay those capital gains when I'm paying low interest, I've got that right to do it. Or I can sell it all, whatever. But I like these because you pay very low fees. Instead of 1 or 2%, it might be 0.2 or 0.5 or 0.25 or 0.1. Really low fees, very liquid, etc. Anyway, be reading up on these, be learning these definitions. And when I see you guys again on Wednesday, if you are here, make some advancements towards understanding all this and have some good questions for me. All right. Y'all have a good one.
Hey, I'm driving, so I will look at it maybe when I get home or tonight. Is that okay? I have no idea how many ounces anything is. I drink a couple cups of coffee, so 2 coffee cups worth would be my answer, but I don't know what that is. I love you. Hey, I'm walking, so sorry for the heavy breathing, but I forgot about this. I mentioned it earlier in the week, but I forgot about it until this afternoon. I have a end of season thank you dinner for Sparrow's volunteers tonight at Nancy's. So I'll probably pay off. So
Donnie took you